Okay, thank you for folks' patience. We will call this special meeting of the Burlington City Council to order. It is 6:05 p.m. I thank my colleagues and the mayor as well for their collaboration in our putting this special meeting together. Really a continued discussion from the meeting that we had at the end of our last council year regarding the actions of March 11th. We heard at our last meeting the local response to that. The focus of tonight's meeting is our community's response to that. We invited a number of community organizations that have been impacted, more importantly, the individuals they served, impacted by the actions of March 11th, and more largely, federal immigration enforcement actions over the course of this past year plus. And I appreciate all of the organizations that have agreed to join us this evening. I also want to note that those organizations to which we extended invitations that were not able to make it also very much appreciate their work. I know that being here takes time away from the service that they're otherwise providing to our community, and I want to take a moment to acknowledge and respect that. Before turning to our agenda this evening, I do want to note, both for those individuals here in attendance as well as online, that this evening and also this past Monday at our organization day and the Mayor's State of the City address, we piloted a new program in collaboration with our Department of Racial Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging, and I want to acknowledge Christian Berry here from the REIB for her work and her colleagues' work in ensuring more language access for our community. And what we are piloting this evening is a new tool called Wordly AI. AI can be used for some good, I suppose. And in this case, it allows for folks to join our meeting and to receive live translation and captions in the language of their choice. And so if you are here in person, I believe there are maybe some printed QR codes. If there are not, whether you're here in person or you're online, if you get onto Civic Clerk and you see our agenda online, there is a link there to Wordly. And if you click on that link, you should be able to log into this meeting, select your language of choice, and an AI tool would then translate it into that language. I do notice that here we have some other folks that perhaps are providing their own live translation, which is great as well, and I thank you for that. But to the end of ensuring language access for all, I did want to note that we have this new tool that's available. And again, if you're here in person, you could always access it from your phone and pop in your headphones and receive live translation here in person, if that was your choice. So I'm excited about this possibility, and again, thank the REIB for their collaboration in that regard. And I think I saw Christian noting that the printed QR codes are on the table over here for sign up for public forum. So with that, we now turn to our special meetings agenda. Is there a motion to adopt our agenda?
I would move to adopt the agenda with the note that the 50-minute limit, our notice on the agenda for the work session is not operative. In other words, there is not a 50-minute limit on that.
Sure, that's right. When we first posted this draft agenda, that 50 minutes was a placeholder, not knowing how many organizations would respond. We traditionally blow over those time limits anyways, and so it remains a guideline that we will no doubt blow over this evening as well. So thank you for noting that, Councilor Bergman. Is there, I think that was a motion as well?
Yes.
Yes, is there a second? Councilor Carpenter, thank you. All in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Are any opposed? That is unanimous. I do also want to note before turning to public forum that we're joined by Councilor Litwin online. And I want to welcome our new colleague, our Ward 3 City Councilor, Councilor Laura Sanchez-Parkinson. So thank you very much, Laura, for being here tonight, and welcome. Some first meeting to be at, yeah. All right, we will now go ahead and open public forum. The rules for public forum this evening are the same tonight as they are at any regular council meeting. We'll begin first with Burlington residents who are here in person in City Hall. We will then turn to Burlington residents online. We will repeat that process for non-Burlington residents here in person and then non-Burlington residents online. We will hold to our 2-minute rule for public forum. When I call your name, if you're here in person, if you could please come to the table. We have a bit of a longer table than usual because we will be asking folks who are here from the various organizations to try to come to the table together, if at all possible. And we may need to spend some time figuring that out. Maybe you'll bear with us as we maybe pull the tables closer and rearrange the room. But please come here to the table. Make sure the microphone is close to you. Hit the push buttons that the green light on the microphone itself is illuminated. If you're online, I will let you know once you've been promoted such that you can speak. When providing comments, please direct them to me as the chair and not to any other individual. We do not tolerate any individualized comments or attacks, particularly those that are based on any individual's protected characteristics. We also ask that comments please refrain from any vulgarities, obscenities, or otherwise being overly loud or disruptive. It's important that City Hall remain a safe space for those who serve, those in attendance, and those tuning in online. With that, I think we can go ahead and turn to our first Burlington resident here in person, who is Ashley Smith, and Ashley will be followed by Rubena Anjum.
Do I just start?
Yeah, please go ahead. The timer's over here.
Tonight is about action. What is the city council going to do? What is the mayor going to do to stand up against ICE and discipline the Burlington Police Department? We are literally in a state of emergency. We have a madman in the White House who's blowing up entire countries and is threatening to annex other countries and is a clear and present danger to the world. His budget is a giant giveaway to billionaires and austerity for workers, and $1.5 trillion to the war budget. That is an absolutely unpopular agenda, and he knows it, and so he's turning to domestic repression to maintain control of our society. He's turning to ICE as his personal Gestapo to be deployed in cities across the country to target migrants, and Steve Bannon and others are talking about deploying ICE to the voting booths for the midterm election. Our rights are in jeopardy right now. The people will stand up. The community defended migrants on March 11th heroically. I wish more city councilors were there standing side by side with them. The real question is, what is the state of Vermont, the city of Burlington, and this city council going to do about it? We are going to hear an avalanche of testimony tonight proving that the Burlington Police Department collaborated with ICE in nothing less than a riot to illegally arrest, detain, and imprison people, 3 human beings, without just cause. The real question is, what is the city council going to do? Why was migrant justice not given equal time at the last city council to refute the gaslighting and lies of the chief of police? And the question to you tonight, what will you do to enforce and discipline the police in this city and make sure the FIP is honored and never violated with such shenanigans as mutual aid? It's time to stand up. Join us on May Day to march on ICE in Williston, Vermont.
Thank you. Thank you. Our next speaker, and I do appreciate folks holding their applause one way or another. We do ask that folks hold their feelings silently with respect to speakers such that folks feel like they can express any viewpoint here. Our next speaker is Rubena Anjum, who will be followed by Maggie Chadwell.
Hi, I'm Rubena, that's how my name is
Thank
pronounced. So I was not present, but I've watched extensive footage of the events and communicated with multiple people who were present throughout the day. I also reviewed reporting from various news outlets. The first thing that federal agents did that day was endanger public safety. They were looking for a man, David Daniel Corona Sanchez, and they were surveilling a house, and that's how this whole thing happened. Now, community members were alerted of their presence and showed up and surrounded the house, and they stood in the rain all day to protect their fellow community members. Things were mostly tame until that judicial search warrant was issued in the evening by Magistrate Kevin Doyle. The warrant was to search the house on Dorset Street to look specifically for Corona Sanchez. State and local police used violence against community members to get them out of the way to allow federal agents to break down the door. They pushed, shoved, and wrestled people to the ground. A Burlington police officer was confirmed to have used pepper spray and is being investigated for excessive use of force. Federal agents used flashbangs and tear gas. Corona Sanchez, whose name was on the warrant, did not even live on the property and was not even present on the property. And instead, what happened was collateral arrests. Collateral arrests are when you arrest someone whose name is not on the warrant, and it has been found to be unlawful by multiple courts in Illinois and in Colorado. So your BPD and state and local law enforcement have essentially assisted in an unlawful action. If I tried to sell a pound of cocaine and a BPD officer drove me around, is that not unlawful on the part of the officer? That's what happened on March 11th. And yeah, it's not, to me, I'm a naturalized US citizen. I became a US citizen in November. It's not, I don't feel like it's the police that's protecting me, it's the people behind me.
Thank you, Urbana. Our next speaker is Maggie Chadwell, who will be followed by Leif Taranto.
Speaking on behalf of Maggie Chadwell, who's not able to be present. Myself, along with a few hundred of your constituents, watched the intimate collaboration unfold between ICE, state, and local police on March 11th, which culminated in the illegal kidnapping of 3 of our neighbors and horrific brutalization of the community trying to protect them. BPD has years-long history of violence towards our community, and little to no action has been taken to hold the agency accountable, despite mass community organizing and outcry. The mental gymnastics it takes for our elected officials and media sources to push the narrative that BPD kept us safe on March 11th is deeply alarming, as are the empty words of Mayor Mulvaney Stanek that BPD will be held accountable in the aftermath of their actions. Faith in the systems you all uphold and protect is crumbling before your eyes, and you're scrambling to repair that by using manipulation tactics like gaslighting and fabricating stories, claiming that we are at fault for the escalation. You faced us with lethal weapons, and we faced you with goggles, masks, and ponchos. Chief Burke had the audacity to say his team is well-trained in de-escalation. Explain to me why, then, the umbrella tossed out of the way resulted in BPD officers violently arresting 2 of my neighbors and horrifically assaulting the neighbors who tried to protect them. Myself and many other community members have combed through hours of footage that clearly show collusion between ICE and BPD, namely Officers Gonzalez, Caro, Webster, Ellerman, Hartnett, Young, Beliveau, Tremblay, and Moyer. I hope the Council and Mayor Mulvaney Stanek take the time to thoroughly review and internalize the trauma and pain you have caused the community, both on the 11th and the time since, by failing to outwardly condemn BPD. There's still time to change your mind. Many of us are waking up to the capacity to care for one another and keep each other safe outside of the fascist colonial project that is capitalism. That very practice is in direct resistance to the systems that BPD is designed to protect and protected on March 11th by carrying out an ICE raid. There is a long, beautiful history of marginalized communities leading resistance to these systems, and we have so much to learn from them. We have to acknowledge that police are not, and under no amount of restructuring or reform designed to protect us. Abolish the police. We keep each other safe.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Leif Taranto, who will be followed by Vivon Bose-Pine.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Cool. Last summer, while we were working to stop ICE's human trafficking through Burlington Airport, some friends and I attempted to inform the airport police that they did in fact have the power to stop the unidentified men who were forcing groups of women out of unmarked vans and through restricted side doors without due process. Chief Burke responded by telling my colleague that BPD would not intervene because his officers were not ready to take the personal risk of confronting federal agents. I bring this up now because we've been told that the police were there on March 11th to protect us. This is a lie. I'm a professional de-escalation trainer, and I've also been part of the project that's gone through thousands of hours of footage. And what we've all witnessed that day, and repeatedly in the footage since then, was a clear-cut situation of police and ICE collusion and excessive force. Here's just some of what happened. BPD collaborated with ICE in a civil immigration enforcement raid, whose origin has been admitted by ICE as a clear-cut case of bias-based policing and mistaken identity. BPD officers provided a corridor for ICE agents to leave with 3 detainees who were not on the warrant and whose detention has been ruled illegal by federal courts. Officers Webster, Moyer, Coro, and others collaborated with ICE in the violent arrest of multiple civilians, several of whom experienced concussions, bruising, and severe respiratory distress. Officer Gonzalez assaulted multiple bystanders and slammed them to the ground, and BPD officers held at least one arrestee face down into the dirt as an ICE agent employed pain compliance torture techniques, twisting their thumb backwards in an attempt to break their wrist. The truth of what happened that day is that your unarmed constituents protected each other, and all your officers did was check that they were feds and then help them with their brutality. I keep hearing that officers were put in an impossible position. It is not hard to not attack innocent community members. It is also not that hard to stand up to ICE. I know this because I've done it and I've seen people do it, without weapons, without protective vests, without the qualified immunity that protects them from the consequences of their actions. All that is required to stop ICE is to say no, to have just a shred of courage and integrity, and to care just a little bit more about your community than you do about things being easy. This is not a hard choice.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Vivon Bose-Pine, who will be followed by Elliot Hungerford.
Can you hear me?
We can.
So today, there's a lot of protests around the state against the war in Iran, the escalations of the war in Iran. There's also more anti-war protests happening. There's one behind you right now. The folks here are coming to speak out against ICE's terroristic attacks against the community, unlawful kidnapping of Joanna Camila Cristian. But that's not all we're here to speak about. And I appreciate the council at the last meeting denouncing ICE's actions as unlawful. I was really disappointed to hear very little denouncing of BPD's actions. You heard a lot of direct testimony of your constituents telling you, this BPD officer smashed my head into the concrete. This BPD officer moved out of the way to have me hit by traffic. This BPD officer tried to ram me with a car. And there was a sort of nonplusness. I understand maybe the politics surrounding the situation. And I think that for that reason, a lot of the people behind me, a lot of the people in general who don't feel represented by this council and by the police have come to recognize that it's really the people that save the people, and the people's house is on the streets. That said, there is still the question of sort of the enormous resilience that the community showed, and that incredible resilience demands an incredible solidarity on the behalf of those who seek to represent and support them. It's also the extraordinary violence that Burlington Police specifically, and I'm not talking about ICE, who Burlington Police fully supported, but also themselves enacted, requires an enormous and extraordinary level of accountability, which definitely was not shown this far. I think you guys know it's now been over a month. It's about time to show some shred of accountability, if not total. Something I keep forgetting to say is that after the events of March 11th, I was talking to some high school students who were there and who were like pretty tense about what was going on. They were just talking with each other. And something they said, one of them said to the other one, it's so crazy how these masked agents can come in completely unaccountable. We have no idea who they are. They can do anything they want. And then another one of them said, it's actually scarier how I recognized that kid graduated recently who's in South Burlington Police Department. That's scarier to me, that our community is terrorizing our community. That's what kids feel. And so I just hope that you guys can hear that today and hold BPD to the same level of accountability you held ICE.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Elliot Hungerford, who will be followed by Julie Masuga.
Did you know that police departments in the United States have their roots in surveilling, controlling, and capturing enslaved people? Did you know that under the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850, enslavers could merely swear that a particular black person was a slave, and cops and federal marshals would kidnap this person, force them through rapid legal proceedings, and then transport this kidnapped person south? Groups of activists called vigilance committees work to disrupt these processes, often getting in the way of marshals and enslavers. In fact, the prevalence of these activist groups was one of the main forces behind the creation of one of the first police departments, the NYPD, who functioned to both break up these slave-freeing riots and to capture fugitive slaves. Do these tactics sound familiar? In a time when our immigrant neighbors are also so often considered illegal under the rule of law, we see a clear historical connection to slavery, from American courts working quickly when that speed serves white supremacy, to police departments and federal marshals like ICE functioning to traffic people deemed illegal and to suppress those fighting for what is right. It's crucial that we see the police's tactics as part of a historical process where the police, including ICE, function not to protect the people, but the interests of capital and those in power. In order to cover this up, the police require an extremely well-funded propaganda machine and a narrative of both heroism and victimhood. Many of us saw this in real time on March 11th and the days that followed. Let's be clear about what the police did. They stood between protesters and ICE in tactical gear, perfectly allowing 3 of our neighbors to be kidnapped, assaulted dozens of community members, opened the streets while the injured continued to receive care, gave over body camera footage to Trump's FBI, putting every activist at risk, and then in the days after, with the help of our mayor and governor, proceeded to pathetically frame themselves as victims of a difficult situation. And as someone who witnessed some of the so-called assaults on officers, these incredibly minor events speak to how fragile and thin-skinned the police really are. We must reject this narrative and see how it functions to cover up the police's blatant collaboration with ICE. Without the lies, gaslighting, billion-dollar propaganda machine, the backing of the courts, and countless dollars of weapons and surveillance technology, the police would blow over in the wind. They stand for nothing.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Julie Masuga, to be followed by Brooke McKean.
I watched my bruised, beaten, and concussed friends read a statement from the mayor's office that all but praised the actions of the police officers that did the bruising and beating. But still, the city could have been neutral, laid out the facts, said, yes, we are investigating this. They didn't have to praise the police or even the protesters, just assured us it wasn't being swept under the rug. Instead, a defense of BPD and nothing from the people who were brutalized. The only condemnation thrown around was for ICE. People are feeling betrayed. Staunch supporters of the administration are wavering. What you do next is very important. Body cam footage of what BPD did to the people itself is itself protected, though freely given to the feds. Right now, it's our word against theirs, and certainly we have our own footage. Hundreds, if not thousands of videos we have combed through, and people have had to relive their trauma over and over again just to find an angle that proves, yes, this man choked me. Yes, BPD protected ICE. The body cam footage is important to corroborate what happened, and we need to make it public as soon as possible. Remember when a BPD officer cracked a man's skull and hid the footage for 8 months? Do not hide this. While I am glad investigations are happening, letting the BPD do them internally is like letting a bunch of second graders grade their own tests. Did they earn a gold star? Probably not. People need to be able to see for themselves what happened. There's a trope in media where someone decides to run for office and they tell a confidant, if I become a certain type of politician, I want you to snap me out of it. We are getting perilously close to that part of the movie. I've helped with a lot of progressive campaign events and was eager when I heard, hey, can you help de-escalate so we don't have to involve the cops? We knew a lot of people in the margins felt safer that way. These elected positions were built on people power. No Mas Polimigro was built on people power, not with chokeholds and weapons. Return to your roots, talk with us, hold the cops accountable.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Brooke McKean, to be followed by Dee Graham.
My name is Brooke, and I am deeply disturbed by the response to the 11th from many of our elected officials in local government. It is painful to listen to many of you continuously double down, gaslight, and manipulate the public and the people who actually live this experience, and it does not bode well for the already active erosion of the public's trust in our elected officials and government. Unfortunately, we've seen this game played time and time again. We show up to these meetings where you create these spaces for people to share their experiences in no more than 2 minutes, of course. You placate us by sometimes appearing to listen. People put trust in you to take their experiences and vulnerability seriously and to respond by taking action towards accountability and change. And just about every time, like clockwork, we watch as you carefully choose your empty words to maintain some sort of neutrality and public image, as you dismiss people's traumas and the immense harm caused, and as you do damage control to try to restore trust and faith in our local law enforcement. If it is not already glaringly apparent to you all, the public's trust in law enforcement is long, long gone. It has been decaying for decades. Folks deemed disposable by the state under capitalism have known this, felt this, said this from the very beginning. Many of us who hold more social privilege and power have awoken to this reality too late, having had the fortune of living most of our lives not being the direct target of their state-sanctioned violence. But every day it becomes clearer to all of us that none of us are kept safe by the cops, that their jobs are not to act guided by a sense of morality and care for community well-being, but rather to protect the interests, property, and capital of the state, which in turn means upholding white supremacy, capitalism, and colonial practices. The 11th is just one gleaming example of this, but a powerful one. You will not change the minds of the people on this reality by standing firmly and loyally behind the police. You will only continue to tear down our trust and faith in you. Their massive operative failure, egregious behavior, and violations of human safety and rights on March 11th are crystal clear. You all upholding their lies and misrepresentations of what happened and attempts to turn them into the victims of the situation only reflects incredibly poorly on you.
Thank you.
You keep saying local law enforcement were placed in an impossibly difficult situation.
Thank you.
Are you serious? Again, it is not difficult to not inflict violence on people. It is not difficult to stand up to Nazis.
Thank
It is
you.
not difficult to act with morality. The police are not the victims here. They are the aggressors. They are the betrayers and traitors of our community. We will be here again and again until you
Thank you.
show that you are capable of stepping out of your bubbles of comfort and complacency. We keep us safe.
Thank you. I will just remind speakers that I will hold everyone uniformly to the 2 minutes. We're providing a bit of flexibility beyond that, but we'll not be able to continue it much further beyond 2 minutes. Our next speaker is Dee Graham, who will be followed by Cassidy Barrett.
Hi, my name is Dee Graham. I'm a Ward 3 Burlington resident and was on scene at Dorset Street for about 10 hours on 3/11. Deep gratitude to the community members who have shared and continue to share their direct experiences, especially those most impacted by this type of violence, which remains an ever-present threat. I'd like to ask the Burlington City Council and the mayor, what are you doing tonight? I genuinely want to know, what are you doing? As we've noted for weeks, public officials and law enforcement have been very hard at work telling a story about March 11th, a story that paints law enforcement ultimately as protectors of the community, that even if some harm was done, it was justified because ICE might have been worse. And, as heard in various forums, including tonight, there is another version of reality that was experienced by our community, myself, and dozens of eyewitnesses, a version that clearly demonstrates violations of the FIP, BPD brutality, and complicity to illegal federal actions, a version that shows us, the community, protecting each other, and a version that is extremely well documented with hours of footage and material evidence, including, I'm sure, your own body cam footage. If you all are as outraged about the violent, illegal, and downright avoidable ICE activity on March 11th as you say you are, I suggest you open yourselves to the undeniable evidence being shared tonight and acknowledge the bottom line that none of this would have been possible without the aid and actions of BPD. That would be a step. I'm sorry to say that hand-wringing will not save us. It will not explain away the false equivalencies of power and violence that your story has so desperately tried to claim. You say your bottom line is public safety, but your goalposts of what are acceptable means of achieving this keep moving, and we see that. So again, I ask you, why are you here? I know you don't want to be here. I know none of us want to have to be here. Take the irrefutable documentation being presented tonight and take some actual meaningful steps to hold BPD to account and commit to what you continue to tout as your goal, protecting our neighbors and community. I know our community is strong, and that is what keeps us safe, and we will never stop fighting for that. So what will you do?
Our next speaker is Cassidy Barrett, who will be followed by Fareed.
Hi, I'm Cass Barrett. I've lived in Burlington for about 9 years. I'm going to keep this brief because I'm terrified of public speaking. Masked people with weapons that can kill, that break into a house with children in it, do not care about the safety of children. And anyone on their side, such as the Vermont State Police, South Burlington Police Department, and Burlington Police Department, also do not care about the safety of children. Are you on their side, the side that does not care about the safety of children? The creation of the police force was and is a racist, white supremacist organization, deeply entrenched in violence, and a tree can only be disentangled from its roots when it's cut down. Abolish ICE, abolish the police, we keep us safe.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Fareed, and then our last Burlington resident here in City Hall will be Sienna McGraw. Fareed, just before you begin, I'll just note here that when we go online, I'd like to be able to share my screen such that folks online can see the timer. In the webinar tool on Zoom, though, I'm not seeing that I'm able to share my screen, so, but just, okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Fareed, thanks for your patience. Please go ahead.
Thank you. I've lived in Burlington for 30 years now, and for the longest time, there was a time when Burlington Police Department didn't kill anybody. You'd have to go back all the way to before Bernie was mayor to find somebody who was killed by the police. But then what happened? I never voted for Bob Kiss. Don't necessarily even like him, but regardless of what you think of him, I saw him put himself between protesters and the cops to avoid a riot that was during the Occupy encampment. So what happened then, we had a new mayor who was the total opposite of that. And instead of protecting the residents, he became like somebody who carried water for the department. And the statistics show it, like under Miro Winberger, the number of Burlingtonians killed by the police is more than all the previous administration combined. I've seen BPD collaborate with the feds and beat up people. I saw them open fire and shot munitions at protesters during the New England Governors Convention. And then a month later, and then a year later, I also saw collaborate with the DEA when they executed a suspected drug dealer on Elmwood Street, almost killing the neighbor who had no idea what was going on. Even though BPD is supposed to be protecting us, they never decide to evacuate the neighbors from this dangerous situation. After the New England Governors Convention, we called for independent investigation. Nothing ever happened. None of you were on the council, and we had a different mayor now. So please this time do something else. Please this time restore our trust in you. Thank you.
Thank you. As mentioned, our last Burlington resident signed up at the moment here in City Hall is Sienna McGraw. Please correct if I'm mispronouncing that. We'll then turn online. The first Burlington resident I see signed up online is Atlas Cooper. Although on Zoom, I don't see anyone by that name. If you're on Zoom under a different name, if you could please use you're here, Atlas. Okay, thank you. So you'll be next, and then we'll go online. Please go ahead.
Hi, I'm Shauna. I was present on March 11th. As we saw on March 10th, the day before, the outcome of a situation that started very similar was entirely different without the presence of forces with this escalated equipment. BPD chief said that was because on March 11th, we showed up with goggles and masks, but that's like seeing someone packed an umbrella and bringing a hose. When have you heard of the people being the ones tear gassing cops? We don't even have money for health care, let alone escalated equipment or flashbangs. On March 11th, for hours, it was clear from the body language of the police, all of them, that they were our opponents. Whether they're following direct orders or implicitly and psychologically trained to stand with other cops instead of against them, I saw tens of your officers, our officers, stuck in a position that they put themselves in by agreeing to show up to support ICE in South Burlington. It is clear that this is a situation you need to make new systems for, because the old ones will continue to leave you in a place where you are breaking the law and hurting the community members you claim to serve. Be creative. They are calling this mutual aid. If you need to change that, ask us. We know what we're doing. We are the ones thinking about human needs, about supporting each other with real aid like food and water and hand warmers and raincoats, things people are asking for, not more guns. So many communities come here to City Council and ask you for the things they need, and we are always showing up and coming up with creative ways to get that for each other, not the police. I choose to keep living in Burlington because of the ways I see many generations of these community members giving so much energy to continuously caring for each other and continuing to change their methods to match what people need around them. That is mutual aid, not the illegal collusion of our police department with ICE. Hold them accountable and make real change.
Thank you, Shauna. So we'll turn to Atlas Cooper then here in City Hall, and then the first Burlington resident signed up online will be Pike Porter.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Atlas, and I was on scene on March 11th. I was acting as a medic, and over the course of the day, I treated friends, I treated community members, I treated teenagers, and I treated just innocent bystanders who just happened to be passing by, got caught in the crossfire. I could relive that experience now and describe that to all of you, but I feel that it would have little effect. I'm one of many people in the community who have come forward to speak to you that you will forget by the time that the doors to this chamber close. I want you to leave here tonight and actually think about what you can do to protect our community and what can be done outside of these seats, outside of what is the social norm and what you are told is all that you can do. Because the people behind me have done that every single day for years. The question that I am turning over in my head over and over again is, how could anyone be okay with anything that happened on March 11th happen? How can anyone see people throw others onto the ground, hurt them and all that, and go, well, maybe I should hear out why they were tossing them onto the curb? And I would just really like you all to, when you leave here, instead of just writing off all of these, actually think about what you can do as city councilors and also as people in Burlington to help us. Because the community stepped up and y'all most certainly did not.
Thank you. We'll now turn to Burlington residents who are online. The first Burlington resident online is Pike Porter, who will be followed by Forrest Richard. Pike, you should be, if we could promote Pike to a panelist. All right. Pike, just so you know that I can't share my screen quite yet here, so we'll be keeping time here, 2 minutes here at City Hall. And I will just flag for everyone that when public forum is done, we're going to take a couple-minute recess just to rearrange the tables here and also try to figure out screen sharing for our presenters. So thank you for your understanding. Pike, you should be able to go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I'm not going to use my 2 minutes because I hope you read the 20-page document I sent back in March. But I still haven't seen what I was hoping to see from the administration and from the city council. You know, I continue to hear that ICE put the Burlington police and the other police forces in a difficult situation, and I don't disagree with that. ICE puts us all in a difficult situation. Most all are immigrant neighbors. But just because it's a difficult situation doesn't mean the answer isn't simple. You step up and you protect people's constitutional rights. We saw a middle school administrator do what the Burlington Police Department failed to do. And I think if the Burlington Police think it's a difficult situation, then they can't show up anymore. They just have to find something else to do. But ideally, well, in that document I sent, I provided at least 7 or 8 concrete things that the Burlington Police could have done and hopefully would do in the future. But one I don't think I described was working, just like they did in advance of ICE actions, working with migrant justice so that in the future, when there is a threat of people being unlawfully detained, the Burlington Police will step in and make sure that they are not. Set up a plan in advance. What happens so that migrants and our neighbors can know in advance? There's no shape, way, or form that the Burlington Police were not complicit, tacitly complicit with what occurred. And really, I think the administration and the city council really need to acknowledge that publicly. Saying that, I do appreciate some of the comments I received from some of you privately. I'll end my comments there. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next Burlington resident we had signed up online was Forrest Richard. Forrest, I see you. If you could promote them, please, to be a panelist. And Forrest. Again, we're keeping time here in City Hall. You have 2 minutes and should be able to go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Forrest. I'm a Burlington resident. I was present on Dorset Street on March 11th. I went straight over after work and didn't leave until 9 p.m. after the last police officers left us in the street, still tending to one another. I was assaulted by a combination of ICE agents and local and state police while linking arms with other protectors. I sustained a concussion, a back injury, and significant respiratory issues, all of which I'm still recovering from. There have been days where my back injury has flared up to the point that both walking and sitting were painful, and I've missed multiple days of work because of the pain and trauma I've been through. And I got off relatively lucky. That day, I also had to watch my friends and fellow protectors, the kindest, most caring people I've ever met, get brutalized by the state. In the weeks since, I've worked with and watched these same people comb through thousands of hours of footage, reliving the trauma of that day, doing the work that local government refuses to do. Why are we doing your jobs? I want to remind you that all this horror and trauma was to serve a warrant for a man who was never there and to kidnap 3 of our neighbors illegally. Local police should be embarrassed, and by extension, anyone on this council and in local government defending their actions that day and for their lack of response. The incompetence is truly staggering, and the unwillingness to take responsibility for any of it is childish and absurd. Not only does the city and state need to take responsibility for what happened and make serious amends, but they need to tell us how they're going to protect their community when this inevitably happens again. This doesn't just go away. It's only going to get worse. Are you going to continue to expect teachers, nurses, and everyday citizens to protect the community? Or are you going to finally take our lead and actually protect and serve the people? The term outside agitators has been thrown around a lot by different groups. Everyone that was there on the 11th knows that the only outside agitators were ICE agents. And instead of protecting citizens from these violent agitators, police made the backwards decision to instead join them in brutally attacking innocent people. People who are there to protect their neighbors. I'm tired of reliving my trauma, desperately trying to prove a point to you that should be self-evident. When will you join us in carrying this weight? You're late. Thank you.
Thank you. The next Burlington resident I see online is Jamie Contoys. Jamie, you can go ahead and unmute yourself if you'd like to participate in public forum.
Me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hi, my name's Jamie Contois, and I'm a local mom. I couldn't be with you in person tonight because I'm home with my little ones, and I'm a constituent in your district, Ben, and then also in Buddy's. And I wanted to say that I've been really proud of the way that grandparents and community members and parents and neighbors have shown up so quickly to protect our immigrant neighbors. I've been horrified as someone who's worked for children in the state of Vermont that we are seeing the incarceration and the lack of due process and the violation of constitutional rights granted to all residents of the United States of America. And we're seeing a massively funded weapon of the United States government that is really exemplifying the ideals of a white supremacist in Stephen Miller in the White House. And it is shocking to me the labor that all of us have to do to try to protect people from going into a system that isn't well resourced for due process, that is notoriously not caring for folks' food needs. We had one of our community members here with a disease who was left without treating their disease when they were incarcerated and taken from Vermont and brought to New Hampshire. We're seeing huge human rights and constitutional right violations across the board. And we just have to prevent in Burlington the disappearance of our families, our children, into these white supremacy systems. I lived in Central America, and it was amazing to me to see who actually tried to cross borders. And for a lot of folks, people use the word illegal. I've chosen to use the word undocumented, and I've seen so many parents who didn't want their children to starve, who wanted to have the dignity of labor and work, who wanted a home that would stand in a hurricane, cross mountains and rivers so that they could provide for their families, and then to have them suffer at the hands of white supremacy organizations funded with the might of US tax dollars is so grotesque. And I will continue to show up with my neighbors to protect all of the immigrants, all of the Black and brown neighbors, anyone who is being targeted either through racial profiling or through other methods. So I just want to keep encouraging each one of you, many of you are my friends on the city council, the mayor, that we align ourselves very quickly with protecting the constitutional and human rights of all of our residents, and that we don't waste our time doing anything but that.
Thank you, Jamie. And thank you for correcting my pronunciation of your name there. I appreciate your being here. We will now turn back to non-Burlington residents here in City Hall. And the first there we have is Brian Clifford, who will be followed by Ryan Allen.
Hi, my name's Brian. I'm from Essex, and I was at Dorset Street on March 11th. I'm going to just rapid fire a bunch of questions I'd like help getting answered at some point. In the last city council meeting, Chief Burke started his timeline of events at 12:39 p.m. when the mutual aid call supposedly came in. I was wondering why the timeline did not start at 8:40 when Chief Burke learned microjustice rapid response mobilization was occurring. Or could the timeline have started at 12:15 p.m. when Deputy Chiefs Young and LaBarge arrived at the Unified Command Post in South Burlington? Were Burlington police engaged in communications with ICE ERO, Homeland Security Investigations, FBI agents, or the Vermont State Police prior to the command post being set up? What were the nature of the conversations between BPD officers and Trump's federal agents in the command post where they were live streaming footage of the protesters? Chief Burke mentioned that Burlington Police Department, South Burlington Police Department, and Vermont State Police Department had been planning to respond to escalated ICE ERO activity for months. Where specifically were these conversations happening? Were any federal law enforcement agencies involved with this planning? And did this planning overlap the purview of the Department of Homeland Security or the FBI? Was there any discussion or hesitation around the decision to hand potential evidence of alleged assaults on ICE agents over to Trump's FBI, or was that just like something that everyone agreed needed to happen? How do you expect us to believe BPD was there to keep the community safe when they arrived on scene trailing 2 SWAT teams, violently escorted transport vehicles through the crowd, made ridiculous arrests with the help of ICE agents, assaulted well-known community organizers for no reason, and then quickly left the crowd and other police officers behind to deal with the federal agents you admit are so dangerous? BPD was there for about an hour. The illegal arrest and extraction of our neighbors took about an hour. They were part of the extraction team. If you want to build trust, we need honesty. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Our next speaker is Ryan Allen, who will be followed by Sarah Lincoln.
Good evening. I like to sometimes try to look at a thing simply, and one of the things I'm trying to think about simply is the video of Officer Gonzalez throwing 2 white women, or outwardly presenting white women, to the ground within a minute on Reddit. And there's been no that isn't real, that's AI. And the story of Burlington, it would seem to me, and these women are absolutely incredible. And it just seems in the story of Burlington now, if no one's really condemning this, then it becomes Burlington's a cool place to push white ladies down onto the pavement. And if it's a cool place to push white ladies onto the ground, it's definitely a very scary place for other people. And I mean, I think we forget so quickly how much action our rights are. And cannabis was just legalized here in the state within the past 10 years, I feel. Queer marriage was just legalized federally 2015, I think. And we all really stand to lose a lot, but like, it'll be a scary place. Burlington, Vermont will be a scary place if no one really condemns the actions of Officer Gonzalez. Good luck.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Sarah Lincoln, who will be followed by Nathaniel Madison.
I have to push this or just start?
It's on.
Okay. So I was not on Dorset Street on March 11th, but I was part of the signal chat that was witnessing what was happening there. And I almost couldn't believe my eyes, but I could, because I was hearing, or afterwards I was hearing like, oh, the local police and the state police were there to protect the residents. And I heard at the South Burlington Council meeting that, you know, things would have gone worse if they weren't there. And I don't know how you can think that the local and state police were there to protect the people. When you're there to protect people, you stand against the aggressors, and they were standing facing the protectors of the families, the protectors that were trying to stop what was happening, the illegal arrests. And it seems like this is a broken record here, that we're hearing over and over again that the police were put in these uncompromised situations. And all I hear from the people that were there was that they were there to protect, the protectors were there to protect everyone inside the house and around. And I don't know how you can think that having police throwing people down to the ground, having a Vermont State Police choke someone to unconsciousness is it all ever going to be okay? And then if your moral compass doesn't stand up, you're not going to have the trust anymore for the people that are here to protect the people. An injury to one is an injury to all, and we know that ICE trains with the Israeli Defense Forces, and it's all connected. So the war in Iran and Lebanon is all connected to what's happening here, and it has been going on for a long time, and you all should get some backbones and wonder that we're going to do something here, because we're all going to keep protecting people when we can. So,
Please. Next speaker is Nathaniel Madison, who will be followed by Gwendolyn Haney. Sorry, it's off now. Yep.
Okay. I'm an Apple feature photographer and videographer. That's why I was there at March 11th. I was there to document the event. I've been documenting Burlington for 8 years, and I've been documenting every protest in Burlington for a little over a year. So my coverage of the 11th has reached millions and millions of people in spite of the complete censorship, it seems like, of US MSM. I've gotten the footage that I shot featured in European mainstream media, featured by European politicians, featured by Latin American mainstream media. But the only person that has Vermonters back in the entire country, it seems like, is Kathy Griffin, a comedian. Okay? This situation is just absurd. So it does make sense that a comedian is the only person with a massive audience that has our back in terms of trying to show the rest of the country and the world what the fascist goons and their collaborators, which people who collaborate with fascists, in my opinion, are absolutely the same thing. They're fascists too, especially at this point. I mean, with what has gone on, what has transpired over the past year, if you are collaborating with these people, you are fascists. You're not just collaborators. Okay, so during the protest, I was attempting to document an ICE agent kneeling and a community defender, and I was walking parallel to a line of heavily armed fascist goons, and they waited. I did not approach these people. They waited until they were out of my vision, and they shoved me into the ground. And also, additionally, I had a flashbang tossed directly at my foot. It went off, and it could have blinded me, and that would have been the end of my photography. So I guess they nearly came close to censoring me there and silencing my voice, but luckily they didn't.
Thank you. Thank you. Our next speaker is Gwendolyn Haney, and please correct me if I've mispronounced the last name. And that speaker will be followed by Sherry Wormser.
It's Gwendolyn Hageney.
Thank you.
Yep. So I was also there March 11th. I just want to chat about a couple of facts that I found really interesting. Teachers, they require 6 years of education, and the starting salary for teachers in Burlington is $46,000. Entry-level officers with no previous experience start at $61,000 while attending academy, $64,000 post-academy, and the officer who assaulted me, Gonzalez, is making $117,000 a year. In addition to that money, he's making extra pay. So every fascist in uniform that showed up to that event made bonus pay to assault their neighbors and to facilitate the illegal detaining of 3 of our community members. Camilla, Johanna, and Christian, we are so delighted that they are home with us where they belong, but it is because of these people making these absurd salaries that they were even detained in the first place. Now, I am one of the people who was assaulted. I was thrown on the ground and received a concussion. Earlier that day, I'd also had a crown put on, and the officer hit me so hard that it fucked up my crown. And I then had to go on antibiotics because I received an infection that there was risk of spreading throughout my face and in towards my brain. I was out of work for 2 weeks. I am self-employed. I don't get paid on a good week. And when I'm not working, I'm bleeding money. So that was a huge hit. I don't have health care. I've paid for all my health expenses. I'm also back in therapy because I have to be. I've been having panic attacks and just totally reduced functionality. Thank you to your officers. And one of the most astounding experiences I've had is how incredible our community is. I have had hundreds of people reach out to me. And I'm just one of dozens of people who were harmed that day. And I really implore you to think of it like an apple. If I had an apple that was rotten, I wouldn't paint it redder and say, nah, it's good to eat. I would put it in the fucking compost. The police are rotten to their core, and they belong in the compost.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Sherry Wormser, who will be followed by Sarah Robb.
Hi, I have some questions for you, and I would appreciate you raising your hands if you agree with the answers.
I'm sorry, but this is not really an opportunity for counselors to engage in a back and forth. You can certainly ask the questions, but counselors by no means are under any expectation to engage in that
Okay,
way.
noted. I'd like my 15 seconds back, please. How many people have watched the Ryan Schwenk testifying under oath videos where he testified under oath in front of Congress to say that he trained ICE to lie and disregard the Constitution? How many people know that ICE lies for a living? How many people have heard that Colton Riley lied to federal judge to illegally abduct 3 of our neighbors? How many of you know that ICE gets bonus points and dollars for taking as many people as they can? And how many of you know that both local and state police not only used violence against us, they failed to protect the 5 people in that home? We know this. They failed to do it. We knew it was an illegal act the moment they walked out with 3 individuals. I will never forget the look on Christian's face as he walked out that door. Both the local and federal, state police supported ICE in every single way. to illegally abduct 3 human beings. They have now, how many of you now know that that has been considered violations of their civil rights? How many of you know, and this is a trigger warning, I apologize, how many of you know that the Patton sisters came this close to disappearing out of a system and potentially be deported? How many of you know that they left Vermont and almost did not come back? And how many of you worked tirelessly to get them back? How many of you know that they could have been sent to a place called Bastille, Louisiana? How many of you heard of a Bastille detention center in Louisiana? And how many of you know the numerous complaints of sexual abuse, violence, medical malpractice, lack of food and water? How many of you know? I have 2 questions for you, if you will allow this. If this was the mother of your children that was there, would you allow the police to do everything that they did that day, or would you do everything that you can to get them out? Because if you say yes, then that family and every single family deserves that same respect and that same consideration. The next question I have for you is, how many of you in this room will actually put together policy and vote for policy to save families from their illegal abductions? How many of you will actually do that? Because we will be watching.
Thank you. Thank you. Please. Thank you. Our next speaker is Sarah Robb, who will be followed by our last Burlington resident here in City Hall, Drew Schatzer.
Nice job with my last name. No one gets that.
Oh, okay.
My name is Sarah. I live and work in communities neighboring Burlington. I'm here tonight because Burlington is Vermont's largest city, and what happens here, how this council and this police department respond, sets the standards for the state, and people are watching. I was on Dorset Street on March 11th. I went because I couldn't go home after work while a family was being terrorized in our community. I went because I recognize that I have privilege, and with that privilege comes the responsibility to show up. I went knowing the risks. What I witnessed was not police protecting the public. It was collaboration with ICE. Burlington PD, South Burlington Police, and Vermont State Police participated and gave federal ICE agents the legitimacy and the backup to brutalize Vermonters. We were protesters using our bodies to protect a family. Protesters were brutalized, and Vermont law enforcement, including BPD, was part of that. I work with policy and procedure professionally. I understand how policy is written and how it's implemented and what happens when language leaves room for interpretation. The fair and impartial policing policy was built in collaboration with the community most affected. The problem is not how it was written. The problem is how law enforcement interpreted it on March 11th. The perceived loophole must be closed. The policy must be rewritten so there is no room, none, for law enforcement to decide that standing next to ICE while they brutalize Vermonters somehow doesn't count as collaboration. No exceptions, no loopholes. But policy alone is not enough if we don't also name what we're up against. There's a deeply embedded culture in policing of officers backing each other up above all else. That culture does not stop at jurisdictional lines. It extends to federal agents when local police stand beside them. That culture will fill every gap, every ambiguity, and every silence in a policy. Can I finish?
Yeah, please.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Police leadership has deflected blame onto protesters and pushed a false narrative that the police had no choices. They had choices and they made them. They've not taken 1 ounce of responsibility. The policy must be strengthened without loopholes so that no Vermont law enforcement agency can ever again support ICE in any form. Burlington lead correctly.
Thank you. Our last non-Burlington resident here in City Hall is Drew Schatzer, who will be followed by 1 non-Burlington resident online, Corinne Sita.
Hello, Drew Schatzer, South Burlington. We've heard a lot of good evidence tonight of the brokenness of our law enforcement and criminal justice systems. You know, in many cases, I think it's accurate to say it should be abolished, but to just speak to the system as it is now, and what maybe we should be doing with the broken system that we have. You know, I can understand when our leaders in law enforcement say, you know, that they don't feel empowered to stop ICE's unlawful actions in the streets and go toe-to-toe with them. I think one of them said it needs to just play out in the courts afterwards, even if it is unlawful. And so now we've seen the courts have said what happened that day was unlawful. So just like if I were to have my rights violated by a law enforcement officer, I've learned that the last thing I should do in that moment is actively resist. I need to just let them violate my rights and then take it up in the courts, sue the city for $50,000 and get my justice that way. So in this case, you know, the courts have ruled this was unlawful, this was unjust. We need to see the same kind of accountability. You know, what would happen if a police officer violated someone's rights and cost the city tons of money? Hopefully they would be fired. So I just want to call on you all to do that same thing. This has already been determined to have been, there was no justifiable reason this happened. And all the law enforcement officers that participated in it should be held accountable for violating rights. Even if they weren't the ones entering that house, they absolutely made it happen and should be held accountable. So thank you.
Thank you. That was our last non-Burlington resident here in City Hall. Again, one additional speaker is online, and that's in Corinne Sita. If we could please promote Corinne. Corinne, we're not able to share the timer online. I'll be keeping time here in City Hall. You should be able to go ahead and unmute yourself.
Can I be heard?
Yes.
Okay, great. Because sometimes I go off, honey, I'm a star. Okay, I know one of y'all crazy behinds and then bring up Kevin Doyle, as in Judge Kevin Doyle. I try to get the legal it girls to call him the scholar judge. The it girls call him the scholar judge. Anyways, I know y'all didn't bring him up. Y'all don't even know what y'all are talking about. You know, the reason why I am an Esther, really, I'm too gorgeous to really be interacting with most of y'all, the masses. But you know what? I gotta set my people free from the spirit of loser. Arguing against ICE, loser. Okay, let me tell you this. The kingdom of God, the people who follow Christ, we don't do loser stuff, okay? We are winners. We are winners. We like America to win. We like our state to win. We are winners. You're gonna fight for some random girl from Latinaville, whatever she came from, but the black girl from Vermont, you're not gonna stick up for her? And you're gonna talk about white supremacy? Again, loser. Again, I'm Esther. I really should not be talking to any of y'all. I really should be in the palace somewhere. But here I am once again, fighting for my people to set my people free from the spirit of loser. That's why I fast and pray. Because I know y'all didn't bring up Kevin Doyle. Anyways, again, y'all don't even know what you're talking about. I see why it happened in South Burlington. It didn't happen in Burlington because the devil knows I don't play with him. I don't play with him. If I say, hey, you're not going to bring that nonsense in Burlington, he's not going to bring that nonsense in Burlington. You ever thought of that? Why do you think it happened in SB? It was close. Burlington, Dorset Street is pretty close, but he knows, Corinne is in Burlington. She said, don't come here. And she has angels that will whoop my ass. So the devil knew I got to keep that nonsense in South Burlington, because if I said, hey, I'm taking my hot girl walks, my angels are coming with me, I better not see any demonicness saying, I don't play with you. And boom, you see how that happened? See, I know y'all are unspiritual and godless, and y'all think it's cute to be unspiritual and godless, but some of us know in the spiritual world that he does not play with me. So when I say there's going to be peace in Burlington, there's going to be peace in Burlington. That's why our president says peace in our country, there's peace in our country. Your own mayor can't even say the word peace. She has to say calm, 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 because the wicked don't know peace. Okay? So once again, and then we're talking about police officers. The police officer handed me the no trespassing order because that mayor knows that if I was
We're at time, Ms. Sita, if you could wrap up.
Oh.
All right. That was our last speaker signed up. We will go ahead and close public forum now at 7:14 p.m. We'll ask that folks please stay close to their seats. Absent objection, we are going to briefly recess just for a couple minutes just to rearrange the tables here as well as to figure out the share screen feature. So Town Meeting TV will be considered in recess, and we'll call the council back to order in just a couple minutes, but folks can talk amongst themselves, and then we'll return in just a couple minutes again. Thank you.
That's amazing. It's just like a piece of another. Were you there? Were you skiing? I was like skiing, but you were coming across the field.
It's funny because Britta got me on my skis for the first time this winter in years. Yeah, I went out to Craftsbury Outdoor Center. It was so cute. We stayed in the cabin, like in the mess hall.
Yeah, Paul and I go every year for 3 nights. It's like our special winter day.
It's so sweet. Yes.
Yeah. I think hey Ben, is the expectation that all of the people from all the organizations will sit at once, or are you thinking?
Yeah.
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 We like to be close. I'll sit right here, Rachel. You were going first, Ethan.
No, I'm not going first.
I'm not
Migrant
first.
Justice
You're
is
going
going
second.
first.
Before me, I guess.
Five. Yeah. So. Yeah.
Okay, I think we're going to try to call the council back to order. I think we're waiting for a couple of us to make it back here, but we have a quorum. So we will call the council back to order. Thank you for your patience while we figured out the share screen function, as well as rearrange the room a bit there. So a couple different things before we ask our guests to introduce themselves. One is, while I certainly understand and respect a number of strong feelings around what occurred on March 11th, I do want to take an opportunity to thank Police Chief Burke for being here this evening and for making sure that you and other members of the administration are here to continue to hear the community's response to this situation. I also want to acknowledge that we're joined by the city attorney online and appreciate her cooperation in our putting this meeting together. Before we proceed, excuse me, I'm getting over a bit of a cold, but before we proceed, there are 2 items that I should mention after some discussions with the city attorney's office. One is a disclaimer that because the events of March 11th are still under review internally by the city as a personnel matter and as potential litigation, the city attorney has advised all city councilors against making any conclusory statements about what happened on March 11th. So I do want to make sure that folks here know that the city attorney's office has advised against those kinds of conclusory legal statements from anyone here at the council in our official roles. The other thing I'd like to note is that we are very much looking forward to hearing from the viewpoints of our guests that are here in attendance. But I should note that the viewpoints made by those organizations here today are those of each of your organizations. And while I appreciate all the organizations are at the table together, I want to acknowledge that the viewpoints held by each organization are not necessarily the viewpoints of each other's organization or those of the city. We've invited a number of organizations to join us this evening, and we have representatives we're very grateful for from Migrant Justice, as well as from Vermont Legal Aid, as well as from the Vermont Asylum Assistance Project, and I will allow representatives from those organizations to introduce themselves. We talked about an order within which folks would present, and our understanding is that representatives from Migrant Justice will present first. We'll then turn to a presentation from Vermont Legal Aid, and then we'll look forward to hearing from the Vermont Asylum Assistance Project. After those presentations, we will turn here to the council, as well as the mayor is welcome to join in as well. with any questions that they may have for our representatives here. After those questions, we'll then open the floor to if any councilors have any additional comments in addition to their questions. We'll have a moment reserved for those comments before adjourning this evening's meeting. With that said, I think I'll turn first to our representatives from Migrant Justice. Rachel, if you could introduce yourself and your colleagues here, that would be great.
Okay, I think you can hear me now. Thank you so much.
Yes.
I'm actually going to pass it over to my colleague Abel to get us started.
Great. And sorry, before you begin, is there anyone from your group I should be promoting as a panelist for you to share any slides? Yes. Is it you, Rachel, or? Yeah. Okay. We'll go ahead and do that to just get it out of the way. Great. All right, thank you.
Everyone, good evening. My name is Abel Luna, and I'm going to be sharing just briefly on what Migrant Justice is and the work that we do. So Migrant Justice is a human rights organization built by migrant workers and continues to be led by migrant workers to this very day. And together, as a migrant community, our goal and our mission is to build our collective voice, our collective capacity, and our collective power to achieve and advance human rights and economic justice. And we do that by working alongside our allies, many of you can see here in the room today, and by visiting our community and gathering together as a community in what we call asambleas comunitarias or community assemblies, where we share stories, we share a meal, we get to know each other, and the goal is to build robust and honest relationship and trust to allow us to build a stronger community and to demand justice and dignity. And over the past 15 years, Migrant Justice has focused on various campaigns to transform the reality that our community is facing, such as the driver license campaign, all the way up to the fair and impartial policing policy. And we also, throughout the years, have built a really strong and robust rapid response network that it's over 3,500 people here in Vermont to support and show up to assist neighbors when they need it in case of an immigration detention. So Migrant Justice is a people's organization. Migrant Justice is a political home for many of whom are in the room here today. And it's important for you guys to know, that all the work that we have done over the past 15 years could be at risk if you don't do the right thing today or if you don't make the right decision. It's important to take into account all the stories that you're hearing from people, from members of the community here tonight. So I'm going to pass it over to my colleague Rachel and Christian.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Abel. Again, my name is Rachel Elliott, they, them. I'm an organizer with Migrant Justice. I'll be interpreting for Christian.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Cristian Jerez. Soy una de las personas afectadas, arrestadas el día de que pasó el 11 de marzo.
Hello, everyone. My name is Cristian Jerez. I am one of the people who was directly impacted on the 11th of March. I was detained by immigration enforcement.
Hoy voy a hablar un poco acerca de lo que se pudo vivir desde adentro de la casa.
And today I'm going to be sharing a little bit about what we experienced inside that house.
Bueno, estábamos ahí adentro de la casa con mi sobrino y con otras dos mujeres y una niña pequeña. Y pues debido a lo que estaba pasando, estábamos con mucho temor.
So I was inside the home with my nephew, 2 women, and the 3-year-old daughter of one of those women. And what we experienced that day was terrifying.
Sí, no, en ese momento la única opción que nosotros teníamos era pues llamar a la gente de justicia migrante, ¿verdad? y pues ellos rápidamente, a los 5 minutos ya empezaron a llegar ahí para que los oficiales no intentaran entrar a la casa o forzar las puertas.
And the decision we had to make was to call Migrant Justice to ask for help. And within 5 minutes, members of the rapid response team started to arrive on scene to make sure that our human rights were protected and that officers would not try to illegally force the door open.
Estuvimos ahí adentro durante todo el día. Estuvimos, la verdad que solo pidiéndole a Dios, porque pues para que no nos fuera a pasar nada malo ahí adentro.
And we were inside all day just praying that nothing bad would happen to us.
Como pudieron, la gente de justicia migrante y unos maestros se acercaron y pudieron sacar a la niña para que ella no pudiera vivir el momento que se acercaba.
And thankfully, community members, including from the school, were able to remove the toddler from the home so that she wouldn't have to experience the horrors that we experienced later.
Cuando se acercaron los oficiales, empezaron a tirar a toda la gente que estaba en la puerta, muchas mujeres y a unas señoras que estaban ahí. Las golpearon de una manera muy fuerte.
And when the officers approached the house, they began to throw protesters to the ground, including women, and in particular, an older woman was thrown quite brutally.
Tiraron la puerta de donde estábamos nosotros, empezaron a preguntar por una persona que no conocíamos y todo eso, y nos identificamos que quiénes éramos y todo, y entonces ellos insistían de que si éramos nosotros o que si nosotros estábamos escondiendo a esa persona.
So when officers ended up breaking down the door and entering the home, they began to ask us questions and demanding answers about somebody that we didn't even know. They demanded that we identify ourselves and kept, insisting and asking if we were hiding somebody inside the house.
Ellos agarraron a mi sobrino y lo estrangularon en el suelo y pues bajaron a la parte de la casa y también sacaron les tumbaron la puerta a las mujeres que estaban ahí.
So they threw my nephew to the ground and strangled him, and then they went downstairs, broke down the door of the two women, and pulled them out as well.
Nos pusieron de rodillas contra la pared a todos y en un momento ellos empezaron a buscar en toda la casa y empezaron a buscar en todo y escuchamos un disparo adentro.
They had us get on our knees and face the wall, and then they continued to search all throughout the home. We heard what we believed to be a firearm going off as well.
Cuando estábamos saliendo para afuera, cuando nos detuvieron, los oficiales estaban riendo de lo que estaba pasando, empezaron a rociar con gas a las personas, abriendo la puerta de su carro y rociándolos.
And as the officers removed us from the scene, we heard them laughing and making fun of what was going on. The officers, ¿dijiste que abriste la puerta o la ventana?
Ellos abrieron su puerta y rociaban a las personas con gas pimienta.
Okay. And those same officers opened the car door and pepper sprayed the protesters that were close by.
Adentro de la patrulla a ellos eso les parecía gracioso, ¿verdad? E incluso habían unas señoras ahí, unos señores y mujeres, y ellos solo se reían de lo que estaban haciendo.
And to the officials inside the car, all of this was really funny. They saw protesters, men, women, young people, and they just laughed.
Ellos que se quedaron con el celular de mi sobrino, también con sus identificaciones y todo, no se la quisieron devolver, no les importó nada, solo simplemente lo dejaron ahí también.
They took my nephew's cell phone and identity documents and refused to return them. It didn't matter to them. They refused to give it back, and they just left him in the house after they took the rest of us away.
Eso era todo lo que quería decir. Muchas gracias por la oportunidad.
¿Y no quieres decir nada acerca de cómo la cosa con la comunidad, como de la corte, algo así, o ya sientes bien?
Estoy bien.
Thank you, that's all I wanted to share. Thank you so much, Christian, for sharing that. I want to thank as well, before I get started, all the volunteers who work tirelessly to sift through, I don't even know, 1,200, 1,300 photos and videos over the last couple of weeks. They spent well over 1,000 hours collectively going through it all. I also want to say thank you to the council for calling the meeting tonight, for giving us the opportunity to speak. And also, and most especially, thank you to all of the runners who've continued to show up for their neighbors. The impacts of the 11th have been far-reaching, especially within the state's immigrant community. For the past month, in worker assemblies and during home visits with members, we've heard time and time again about how terrified people were by what happened on the 11th, and most especially the role that the police played in it. I wanted to share a couple of testimonies from workers who wrote things out as we were reflecting as a community during a recent worker assembly in Chittenden County. One member shared, "The thing that scared me the most was seeing how police collaborated with immigration officers, even though there are policies against it. The police took their side. It was wrong for them to use pepper spray and to push protesters and throw them to the ground." Another community shared, "I was hurt to see the police be so aggressive with protesters. It made me feel powerless and so afraid. I never thought that something like this would happen in Vermont." And that last bit about never thinking that something like this could happen in Vermont is something that we've heard time and time again. Up until March, people in our community felt relatively safe in Vermont. Obviously, there have been a massive increase in immigration detentions, but they also saw the protections that are in place and trusted that those protections would hold firm. Unfortunately, a trust that has been broken since the 11th. Time and time again, we hear from members who speak of being afraid to leave their home, being afraid to go to work, being afraid to get groceries, to go to the doctor, people keeping their children home from school because they're afraid of what might happen if they're separated. And there's this profound fear that years of struggle of the community to pass the fair and impartial policing policy were in vain, that things will go back to how it was before this really strong and important policy was put in place. ICE's detention of Christian, Joanna, and Camila on March 11th was violent and unlawful. 3 separate federal judges have ordered their releases because ICE clearly violated their constitutional rights. And these violations were made possible only through the direct support of state and local law enforcement, including the Burlington Police Department. The decisions made on the 11th by Burlington police officers have not only undermined the immigrant community's already tenuous trust in law enforcement in Burlington, but throughout the entire state. Officers worked shoulder to shoulder with ICE to facilitate these unlawful detentions, responding to ICE's request for assistance in the morning, deploying militarized agents to remove responders and protesters and to clear a path for ICE to enter the home in the afternoon, and by the evening's end, helped ICE to brutalize dozens of Vermonters. These actions clearly and unquestionably violate Vermont's fair and impartial policing policies, which were intended precisely to prevent these actions. As Chief Burke has now done on several occasions, I'd like to briefly review the events of the day with a specific focus on Burlington Police. And at this point, I'm also going to share my screen so that you can see some of this written out. Potentially. There we go. Cool, I can see on the screen that that's up on Zoom. Hopefully everyone in the room can see it as well. Again, I want to say thank you to the community members who spent, again, well over 1,000 hours reviewing all the footage that people have submitted to Migrant Justice. So here is the timeline of the day, starting at about 7:38, that we've been able to construct not only through the testimony of people who were present, photos, videos that have been time-stamped, and also from the public statements made by Burlington, South Burlington Police, various other members of state and local government. So the first thing that I wanted to highlight was the beginning of it all at about 7:38 when South Burlington Police received a call about a car wreck. And it was at this time that ICE told the Burlington police that they had an administrative warrant and not a criminal warrant. And something important to notice here is that it was ICE that called for support. It was ICE that called in local police. Shortly after the initial call came in, we at Migrant Justice received a call on our emergency line reporting a potential ICE enforcement action in progress on Dorset. Within a couple minutes, a Migrant Justice volunteer arrived on the scene and was able to confirm the presence of ICE officials. It was at about 8:30 a.m. that Migrant Justice then activated our rapid response network that Abel explained briefly earlier. There's more on the screen than I'm going to review. So again, I'll just keep it to the very most key moments. At around 10:30, Johnston, who is the ICE officer in charge on scene, tried to get South Burlington police officer Plunkett to help to get protesters away from him, to which Plunkett responded, "Every directive I've been told by your commander, you guys are supposed to be standing down." So at about 10:30, the understanding was that officers were going to be standing down. At 11:19, South Burlington Chief Bro contacted leadership of the Vermont State Police Tactical Service Unit to talk about mobilization, and then called Chief Burke and says that he'll need Burlington Police to support if things become dangerous. Just after noon, Unified Command Post was set up in the South Burlington City Hall, where Burlington Police, ICE, South Burlington Police, etc., collaborated to come up with plans for the day. At that time, they also began streaming the body cams. ICE agents from out of state arrived and pepper sprayed protesters. At around 2 o'clock, another officer warned the people at the front door that federal agents will remove them without warning and that they will use force. And when asked about the fair and impartial policing policy, he argued that the Vermont State Police must interject if there's a judicial warrant. When asked if he had seen one and verified the name and date, he said no. At 4 o'clock, Chief Bro said at this point that this is the point where state and local police would, quote, follow ICE while breaching the home. In other words, when ICE officers broke down the door. At 4:40, thank you. At about 4:40, we started noticing the Vermont State Police and ICE tactical teams gathering in the U-Mall parking lot behind the Hannaford. At 4:55, after all of this had happened, Colton Riley, the ICE agent who started it all, who has since said that he no longer believes that the person they were looking for was on site, arrived on scene with a warrant. And then at about 5:30, ICE broke down the door with the support of state and local police, entered the home, and illegally detained Joanna, Camila, and Christian, as Christian described. As you can see, throughout the day, there were various points where, before Burlington police officers, before state and local police officers physically began assaulting protesters, where they were supporting ICE and supporting federal agents in planning, in strategy, and in talking to protesters who are on scene. I now want to briefly go over some of the injuries that we've been able to document that have been caused by Burlington police officers. At least one person had an asthma attack from being pepper sprayed. Several people, including myself, after being assaulted by a Burlington police officer, have been experiencing neck and shoulder pain. All of this for me is sprained, which is causing issues. Several concussions, including one person who said that when they went to the doctor identified 5 different places where the person was hit that could have caused a concussion. We've seen severe bruising of arms, legs, and heads, as you can see on the screen. Complex thumb and wrist injuries, some of which comes from pain compliance used by officers. And of course, the psychological trauma of seeing state, local, and federal law enforcement officers attack our community. And all of that is specifically from Burlington police officers. That doesn't say anything about the ICE officers, Vermont State Police officers, and South Burlington police officers who took violent action against community members that Burlington police enabled. I want to go over a couple of specific examples. Two of them are the so-called white ladies that got thrown to the ground, including myself, although I am not a lady. So I'm going to share those videos briefly. I'm hoping the sound will come through. I will warn you, there is an expletive used here. So here's one example from another angle where you can see a little bit more. And because it happened quickly, I'll highlight the fact that you can see that both of my hands are up when I was thrown to the ground, and if the audio were coming through, you would hear me say, "I love you, we're gonna get you out, you're okay," to the person that they were walking away. Next, I wanna share a video of another assault, also by the same Officer Gonzalez, and Gwen shared her testimony of this experience earlier today. Another from a different angle. I think many of us have seen this particular picture where a protester is being violently arrested and held to the ground. And I'll share this brief video where you can see an officer pinning her down or pinning them down and violently forcing their hands together behind their back, while being stood over by an ICE officer. In this video on the right, you'll see officers using pain compliance against a protester, again, forcing her hand behind her back and using maneuvers that we see used to break people's wrists. And I'll not share the video on the left because the important thing is the audio, and that appears not to be coming through right now. Bear with me, we're getting there.
Maybe on your end. I don't have any options on my end that indicate.
Yeah, the issue is that because I'm physically in the room, if you mute yourself or mute the room's audio, then it should be able to come through. I'll turn the audio on.
Town Meeting TV, do you have any sense as to, if there's audio in the shared presentation, do you have any sense as to how? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you can just hear it off my computer. I'll put the microphone there.
I think you could put the microphone up to the speaker.
Okay. I see. You'll just need to not speak.
Police department. It's always still on film. Was it worth it? Was it worth it?
For real, you guys are policing for the ICE. Like, what's up with that? What happened to all the...
I'm not sure if it was too clear from the sound quality, but the person who was being arrested was saying, there's a federal officer like twisting my hand or doing pain compliance. I don't remember exactly what she said, but something along those lines. Those are the pieces that I wanted to share right now. Again, we have hundreds of videos, hundreds of hours of videos that we're happy to share with you all. We can talk through how to get that to you best. I just wanted to highlight a couple of the more egregious examples.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate your all being here this evening.
I still got more to do. Can I keep going?
Yes, please. All I was going to say is,
Oh, yeah.
is just if there's anything that you would like to share with the city council. My assumption is that the links in the presentation are probably linked to other files that are on your computer, or are they linked to somewhere online? Or?
They're directly uploaded.
Okay, great. If you want to send me or the full city council the presentation, we could also ensure that it's posted to our agenda, so it'll be available online.
Okay, great. Yeah, let's connect afterwards and we can talk through how to do that. Thank you. Despite officers' attempts to hide behind a, quote, Trojan horse of, quote, agitators, what we saw throughout the day was police presence precipitating and escalating violence. They brutalized protesters, shoving us, throwing us to the ground, and using pepper spray. The fear and uncertainty that our community is now facing was made possible because police officers collaborated with ICE in clear violation of Vermont's fair and impartial policing policy. I now want to review specifically the places where the Burlington Police Department violated the policy. And this is from the Vermont State Model Policy, which sets the baseline protections that all jurisdictions, or that all state and local police need to comply with. So first, in section 6D9, that is the number 6, the letter D, number 9, agency members shall not accept requests by federal immigration authorities to support or assist in civil immigration enforcement. This is a violation in fact. Right? At the end of the day, police officers supported ICE in 3 civil detentions. And while, we've heard time and time again from officers that the motive was crowd control and public safety, not assistance in immigration enforcement, the law enforcement officers time and time again focused on policing protesters, not ICE. If public safety were the motive, it would have required the officers to actually protect people from ICE, not the other way around. In section 6D6, the policy says, agency members shall not facilitate the detention of individuals by federal immigration authorities for suspected civil immigration violations. Again, state and local law enforcement, including the Burlington Police Department, facilitated the detention of Joanna, Camila, and Christian on civil violations. The policy doesn't govern on intentions, right? We can hear time and time again, oh, we were just there to serve this criminal warrant. We were there to protect protesters. In fact, what they did was facilitate not 1, but 3 detentions of individuals by federal law immigration enforcement for suspected civil immigration violations. Next, in section 5B, it says, though agency members have authority to enforce federal criminal law, enforcement of federal criminal immigration law is generally not a priority. Accordingly, agency members should not make warrantless arrests, detain individuals, facilitate the detention of individuals, or otherwise expend resources investigating or enforcing unlawful entry or, and this is important, unlawful re-entry cases, unless such actions are necessary to ensure public safety or officer safety, which is defined very specifically as of 2024 as imminent risk of physical injury, or 2, integral to the investigation of criminal offenses unrelated to immigration law. So again, policy anticipated the loophole of unlawful reentry, which was the excuse used that day to enter the home, and also speaks to criminal immigration enforcement, stating that it is not a priority and should not expend resources. And frankly, I would love to know how many city and state resources were expended that day. I know I saw a lot of officers standing around for a lot of the day. The final portion that I want to highlight is section 6C1 that says, however, this section shall not be construed to require members to affirmatively interfere with federal officials' lawful authority to interview, detain, or arrest with or without a warrant. An individual, example, by using force or physically blocking the official. And this is the portion that we've seen cited to say, well, the fair and impartial policing policy says that we, or they, the local and state officers, cannot intervene. But this portion only applies to situations in 6C where the individual is already in law enforcement custody. So, over the last couple weeks, police have been attempting to avoid accountability by presenting this narrative that their presence was there, was to protect the public, right? It wasn't to aid ICE. But this narrative is contradicted by the facts. One, police's presence was at ICE's request, not the community's. Two, police did not stop ICE's brutalization of the residents in the home or of any of the protesters. Rather, they themselves committed the violence. And finally, law enforcement officials have since made clear time and time again in public testimony that they will not seek to intervene in future occasions to stop ICE from assaulting Vermonters. But don't just take it from us, don't take it from me. You can take it directly from the officers themselves. Again, time and time again, throughout the last month, we've heard from local and state officers, from the heads of police departments, from state employees, and I want to share a couple of quotes. At approximately 8:45 a.m., agents with ICE requested assistance from the South Burlington Police Department due to a crowd of individuals protesting in the area. That was from a press release from South Burlington Police on the day of March 11th. Again, saying that they responded specifically to ICE's request for assistance. Next, and this again is a quote from the Vermont State Police's press release, the state police, including members of the critical action team, ensured federal agents were able to pass through the crowd of protesters to reach the residents and carry out the lawful order of the court. And I'll remind you that, one, every single judge that any of the people detained on that day have been put in front of has since said that it was a deeply unconstitutional set of detentions. But also the agent who provided the original testimony that led to the warrant, that led to the officers breaking down the door, has since said that he, quote, no longer believes that David Daniel Corona Sanchez, quote, was an occupant of the Toyota Camry I observed on March 11th, 2026. Next, and this is a quote from the Commissioner of Public Safety, Jennifer Morrison, during a press conference with Governor Scott. Police used a highly trained team to create a very narrow corridor to allow the ICE agents to do their job. Next, a quote from South Burlington Police Chief Bill Breaux. It was assumed that ICE had every legal justification to detain Joanna, Camila, and Christian. Next, I want to share a quote from our very own Chief Burke. The actions of Vermont law enforcement in South Burlington aided in the execution of a criminal warrant. Once the agents were there, they still have their lawful authority to do what they need to do. And finally, a quote from the Commissioner of Public Safety, Jennifer Morrison, from a legislative hearing on the 19th of March. That was the plan all along, to provide for separation so that everyone could do their job. Protesters could do their job, agents could do their job. In press releases, press conferences, public hearings, Burlington officials have sought to create this narrative that twists the events to avoid accountability. Despite claims of ongoing reviews, officials are preemptively exonerating themselves, patting themselves on the back for their department's professionalism and restraint. What I saw was neither professional nor restrained, frankly. Vermonters are not fooled by officials' misdirections, victim blaming, and outright fabrications. We can clearly see that local agencies worked hand in glove with ICE to detain immigrant Vermonters and to brutalize the community defenders seeking to protect their neighbors. We expect that our elected officials will see the same. And before all of this, we were asked as Migrant Justice to come in with some specific asks for next steps, which I'd like to share now. First, we would like affirmation that state and local officers are responsible for compliance with state and local responsibilities without giving unverified free passes to federal agents. And we want accountability for what happened, not only for the violation of the fair and impartial policing policy, but from the violation of Mayor Mulvaney Stanik's own executive order. From past testimony, I will assume that y'all won't necessarily answer this, but I guess asking rhetorically, for any, in part 3 of the executive order, I guess bullet point 3, I can pull it up here if you want the specific section. For any injured person on the scene, for any injured person on the scene of civil immigration enforcement, Burlington police personnel shall immediately summon emergency medical services and make all reasonable efforts to render aid according to BPD's directives and their training. Did they summon EMS? Did they call in for any medical help for the protesters that were injured, either by themselves or by other immigration agents, by other police officers? Next, from the executive order, if BPD personnel receive information from a member of the public regarding conduct by federal agents that constitutes an apparent violation of state law, shall notify their supervisor, who will ensure that a report is completed, consistent with the requirements outlined in department policy. Have any such reports been completed? Burlington Police BPD supervisors will ensure that all evidence is preserved and that investigations are conducted in a timely manner and referred to the Chittenden County state attorneys as appropriate. Have any investigations been started? What's the status of those investigations? Next, BPD shall report to the Mayor and Police Commission credible reports of unlawful conduct by federal agents engaged in civil immigration enforcement. Has the mayor been informed of any unlawful conduct? Finally, BPD shall, to the extent permitted by law, publicly report aggregated data without disclosing personally identifying information or information restricted by law regarding incidents in which BPD personnel documented or received reports of unlawful conduct by federal agents engaged in civil immigration enforcement. So when are we going to get that data? When are we going to see the evidence, the reports that have been made? Next, we're calling for investigation and accountability for the officers found to have violated use of force policy. We call on the Police Commission to act using their full authority, and also that all cases should be referred to the CJC or the Criminal Justice Council, where officers may face decertification. Furthermore, we encourage the state to conduct investigations as well, including through the legislature and by the Human Rights Commission. And finally, we call for the affirmation and training in the content and application of the policies that we've been speaking about, what they mean and how they apply in real-life situations, such as the one we saw on the 11th. What this means in practice is that if BPD receives a request for mutual aid, it's incumbent on the department to verify if the provision of mutual aid would put them in violation of the fair and impartial policing policy. If the request for support came from ICE, as it did on the 11th, or if the action is in furtherance of immigration enforcement, the department must decline the request. The policy doesn't prohibit BPD from being present in immigration enforcement actions, but it does place restrictions. For instance, presence cannot be precipitated by a request from federal immigration agencies, again, as it was on the 11th. That presence must strictly conform to a public safety role, not acting as BPD did, and as has been admitted repeatedly by police officials, as I quoted some of, to allow ICE to do their job. A public safety objective must include, as mandated by the use of force policy, that offers, quote, intervene whenever they witness another officer using excessive force, which again, we've seen clear evidence of today. In other words, if BPD officers are to be present during immigration enforcement actions under public safety justification, then they must actually keep the public safe. This can never be context for supporting ICE, right? This can never be a pretext for supporting ICE, as it was on the 11th. Next, a declaration of a criminal investigation by federal immigration authorities, including the presence of a criminal warrant, does not give BPD carte blanche to support the enforcement action, as has been repeatedly suggested by officials. The FIP, or the Fair and Impartial Policing Policy, continues to place severe restrictions on criminal immigration enforcement actions, such as illegal entry or illegal reentry. As we saw on the 11th, what began as a criminal enforcement action for unlawful reentry ended up as a civil enforcement action. ICE can't be trusted to limit their actions to their stated target. Their so-called collateral arrests are always a possibility. Thus, any support provided for criminal immigration enforcement could result in support for civil enforcement, as happened on the 11th. Thus, as a matter of practice, BPD must also decline requests for support on ICE investigations for unlawful entry and reentry. And I'll say, these practices are already mandated by the Fair and Impartial Policing Policy. They're already mandated by the mayor's order, right? They must be affirmed by city leadership, and officers must be trained to follow them. Thank you, that's all from me.
Thank you. Thanks. Again, appreciate representatives from Migrant Justice joining us this evening. I think before we turn to the council for any questions for any of our presenters, we'll continue on down the table. And next up, we're joined by Attorney Barbara Prine, an attorney at Vermont Legal Aid. And Attorney Prine, when you're ready, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm Barbara Prine. I'm a staff attorney at Vermont Legal Aid. I have a much smaller piece to talk about. I was in my capacity at Vermont Legal Aid, I was at Dorset Street for a couple hours in the morning, and I wanted to describe to you what I saw and explain to you also a little bit about why I was there. Vermont Legal Aid has a program, an immigrant minor guardianship program, where we help undocumented parents make plans, legal plans, in case the parents are deported, so that someone assumes responsibility for helping the child be reunited, the children be reunited with their parents in this country or another. We have volunteer attorneys who meet with the undocumented parents. The undocumented parents have identified a trusted guardian. The volunteer attorneys help complete power of attorney forms and guardianship forms, so that should the parents be detained or deported, the children do not end up in Department of Children and Families custody. They don't end up in state custody. Instead, they're cared for by a trusted adult who plans to reunite the children with their parents. We started this program, we restarted this program in January. We have 15 trained volunteer attorneys. We've had 11 or so clinics. We've helped more than 95 families set up plans for reunification so that 160 children know if their parents are taken away from them, there's a plan to get back together. So that's a program we run. On March 11th, I was contacted by one of our potential guardians who had completed paperwork with the family because the family was in the home at Dorset Street. I went to the house in the late morning with the minor guardian and the person who was to become the minor guardian. I communicated with the ICE officer in charge. I introduced myself. I told him who I was. I told him that there was a minor child in the house. ICE has a policy, ICE Directive 1106 4.4, that says that immigration officers are supposed to help arrange for care of children when there's an immigration enforcement action. They're supposed to arrange for children to go with a potential guardian. And so I introduced myself to the officer. I told him that there was a child inside the house. I asked him to ensure that the child could be gotten out of the house safely before there was an aggressive enforcement action. He refused to do that. I asked him for his, talk to his supervisor. I asked for his phone number. He could not remember his telephone number. He could not tell me what office he was from. He said I should Google the Boston ICE office if I wanted to get in contact with him. This was Officer Johnston. He was completely unaccountable. And when I reminded him that he was supposed to help the child leave safely, he just refused. He just absolutely refused. I then went and talked to the South Burlington police officer in charge, who did give me his card and told me his name and was sympathetic, but said that there was nothing he could do. He could not help me get the child out. ICE was in charge, and they were going to do what they wanted to do. They were there to arrest people, and that's what they wanted to do, and that was what was going to happen. A couple hours later, it was the protesters who got the child out of the house safely with the help of the South Burlington School District and the minor guardian. They made a path protecting the child to get the child out of the house. So, you know, I have to say, I've been a legal aid attorney for 30 years. I've dealt with a lot of government officials. I've dealt with a lot of law enforcement. I was shocked by the disregard for the safety of a 3-year-old by the ICE officer and by the South Burlington police's telling me they couldn't do anything, and that it was the protesters who ensured the child was out of there before the events that he just described. So my recommendation is that we do not want to be participating in ICE enforcement actions. And if you believe that all the policies were followed, which there's been good testimony that that was not true, then you have to immediately figure out what policies need to be changed. And you have to do this very quickly, faster than municipal government typically works. So I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Prine. We're also joined by Attorney Jill Martin-Diaz, Executive Director for the Vermont Asylum Assistance Project. Attorney Martin-Diaz, can you slide the microphone over to you?
Hi. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much to City Council for calling this meeting tonight. Thank you to the administration for being here and hearing us out. I know it is past 8 p.m. on a night when all of us have worked tremendously hard, many of us in this room, addressing the other detentions that were transpiring in our community this week, trying to keep the next people snagged by ICE safe here in Vermont where they can access their family and communities and counsel. So I hope you'll indulge me. What I'm going to share with you tonight is from my perspective as an immigration attorney. I am a Ward 2 resident. I have been practicing civil legal aid, particularly immigration defense, for 10 years. And I'm the executive director of Vermont Asylum Assistance Project, a new legal services provider that coincidentally stood up just in time to be able to provide this kind of legal defense. My testimony as an attorney inherently turns on what happened next, because I'm an immigration defense lawyer. People come to me after they are already harmed, and then they seek my counsel on what of their rights were violated and whether there are any remedies available to them. I have a lot of mission and vision and values in common with the community members who you heard testify tonight. And I help lead Vermont Asylum Assistance Project and the other immigration legal service providing orgs in our community, like Vermont Afghan Alliance, Association of Africans Living in Vermont, the Center for Justice Reform Clinic, and most recently, Vermont Legal Aid, to help close the longstanding justice gap for community members like Christian. A byproduct of that is that I also, in the course of my work, reinforce, legitimize, and make function easily, more easily, a system of violence, the legal system, the carceral system. By working within the system as an attorney, even a defense attorney, I am inherently reiterating the legitimacy of a system that was built on violence and that continues to perpetuate violence. And that's something that I have worked really hard on myself to just own. It means that sometimes I am working within systems of violence and that I am complicit. It is really challenging to sit with that tension. And I think it is incumbent on any leaders who I know are all squirming in their seats tonight over the violence that we've just witnessed, over the pain and trauma that we just heard shared with us from our community members. It's incumbent on us to sit with that discomfort and then think about what do we do next. That's our job. And that's why we all got into working within the system, yes? So that's why we're here tonight. And what I want to share about what came next is a few points. One, we are very fortunate that this horrific event took place in a jurisdiction where we have such an outsized, rapid response, community organized, and legal response mechanism. The District of Vermont is leading the nation in exercising checks on ICE's abuse of power and thereby on the president's abuse of executive power. And that's not despite the community organizers who you heard tonight, whose language, choice, or political perspectives you might not share personally. It's because of them. Because without rapid response, that Migrant Justice is leading the nation on. They seek out technical assistance from the National Immigration Project. They're the TA provider for rapid response, and like Migrant Justice blows every other system, at least in New England, way out of the water. It's because of how incredible their rapid response program is, how generous our community members are with their bodies, with their resources, with their mouths. Look at how they've shared of themselves emotionally tonight. It's because of all of that, their accompaniment, their witnessing, that we lawyers are able to come in after the fact and help the community to move forward and seek remedies. It's not despite, it's because of. And I know that with the Vermont Immigrant Legal Defense Fund, I'm an attorney, I'm credentialed, I walk in here with a suit, and I testify from my laptop instead of my heart. And that gives me access to more time on the agenda than the other community members who were actually eyewitnesses of what transpired on March 11th. And I just want to make crystal clear that we would not be doing the work we do as attorneys if it wasn't for the people sitting right here with us. What our experience was like on March 11th at Vermont Asylum Assistance Project was familiar chaos. It was familiar chaos, not just familiar behavior from Immigration and Customs Enforcement. It was familiar entanglement with law enforcement. It was familiar disorganization in the community about who to call and what resources we could mobilize outside of rapid response because of a continued silence from our state leadership that has the power to share messaging like they did in the COVID-19 pandemic, but chooses not to. And just for the record, vaapvt.org/help is the one and only place you need to go to request an immigration lawyer to intervene in an event like March 11th. That was all very familiar to me, and my removal defense practice that I began in New York and New Jersey, ICE violence is what I have come to expect in my legal practice. And we're so lucky, we are so lucky that we live in a jurisdiction where we had these community and government institutions that were in place to make sure that Christian would be available to be here and share his story so generously with us tonight. But I want to make clear, and I'm not saying this in a capacity, I don't represent Christian, but he and Joanna and Camila are asylum seekers, right? They're humanitarian status seekers. And for them, their immigration journeys have now just begun. So when you talk about impact, I'd like us all to remember and center that the 3 people who were collaterally arrested in this violent enforcement action, all of the legal work, all of the community work that was done to see them walk free and be here with us tonight, does nothing to remedy the underlying question that they are now in removal proceedings and now have to share their trauma over and over and over again and be cross-examined by ICE counsel in court about their trauma, and that they're beginning their journey now from the disadvantaged place of having gone through the horrific events that came on March 11th and afterward during their detentions. One of my attorneys was interviewing one of the individuals who had been impacted, and the person became so dysregulated, citing flashbacks from March 11th, that they had to stop the legal meeting, even though there is an immigration court hearing coming up that makes the meeting very time sensitive, which we explained to the person. They were feeling too traumatized to continue. And that is just unnecessary. We just need to recognize when we talk about impact and accountability who it starts with and how it reverberates out. In terms of reverberations, by all accounts, including findings of fact made by federal courts, as well as testimony given tonight, given at the State House over several hearings, and lots of accounts shared on social media and other forums, there were numerous fair and impartial policing violations that transpired on March 11th. It seems all but, it would be very difficult to conclude otherwise. And the fair and impartial policing policy was designed, from my perspective as an immigration lawyer, I was supportive, and my organization was supportive of the FIP, because we need to be able to honestly counsel our clients, our non-citizen clients, that it is safe to call for emergency help when you feel that you need it, that no, it will not put you in risk of ICE enforcement. And the fair and impartial policing policy is the tool that allows us to say that to our clients genuinely. But the way that we see the fair and impartial policing policy enacted, if March 11th was a test of what I expect will be ongoing tests throughout the Trump administration, we failed. We failed our community members. And we can't tell our community members, our client communities, that we know it is safe to call for emergency help if you feel you need it. And now we are putting people who are experiencing violence or instability at home, people who need emergency medical care, we're pushing those people further into the shadows, exactly like the Trump administration wanted. That's the point. Fear is the strategy. And this entire fear-mongering campaign that's reverberated through the community has, as Rachel described, undone years and years and years of progress being made, trying to reduce harm for non-citizen community members here in Vermont. You also note, and Rachel flagged, that there wasn't just all of this testimony that you've heard tonight. There were also conclusive findings of fact by federal district court judges on how illegal, unconstitutional, what transpired on March 11th was. When just a quick primer, habeas corpus is a Latin phrase that means produce the body, and it's a form of a check on executive power that comes from common law. Before the US, it came from the UK. And it's a very extraordinary remedy to ask a court to exercise a check of habeas corpus against an executive. And this year, there have been thousands of orders made by federal district judges that ICE is snatching bodies away illegally. And immigration lawyers feel clear that the purpose behind that habit, that practice, is preying upon a particularly disempowered population so that using them and the system that they exist within, the immigration legal system, to normalize executive abuse of power. They're counting on us not being able to seek checks and balances. And we do. And we win. And the District of Vermont is leading the nation in coming up with rapid response models in court. I want to quote for you a finding from the decision on Joanna Patin, one of the other two, who suffered harm at the hands of law enforcement on March 11th. The court concluded that a Fifth Amendment violation occurred. Ms. Patin Patin has raised a serious claim and has brought a successful claim, and in this case, law and justice require immediate release. In deciding to release Ms. Patin Patin, the court also had to confront the extraordinary context in which her arrest took place. The government has adopted a policy of mass detention for immigrants despite the constitutional limitations on civil detention. ICE frequently makes arrests without an administrative warrant or an individualized assessment of flight risk or a danger to the community, as it is their position that almost every underdocumented person in the country is subject to mandatory detention, which is not based in law. And yet, many of the individuals caught in the government's dragnet, including Ms. Patin Patin, are not specific targets for enforcement, and rather, their arrests are the product of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Cristian, gracias por su testimonio. Lo siento que voy a leer desde su orden, okay? I just said thank you for your testimony, and just a note for you, I'm about to read from your order, from the order for habeas release. In Cristian's case, regarding the constitutional deprivation that Cristian suffered, the Supreme Court has set out a well-settled three-part test around when civil immigration confinement is inappropriate. The three factors are the private interest, blah, blah, blah. I don't know, I'm already bored, so I don't want to bore you. The petition, yeah, right. Here, Cristian's private interest in freedom from imprisonment was strong. The petitioner was, quote, detained without any pre-detention, any individualized determination as to whether he posed a flight risk or any risk of dangerousness. And there is no indication that there was any material change in circumstances. It appears instead that Cristian was detained simply because he was residing at a house that ICE officers mistakenly believed another individual for whom they initially did not have a warrant got arrested. It's so strange to me as a lawyer who's been called on, including by the city of Burlington and many institutions, to give Know Your Rights trainings. Know Your Rights was the first response from the community. And the first right that we teach everyone in Know Your Rights is your right to privacy from unreasonable and excessive intrusion into your privacy by law enforcement, right? Your right to ask for a warrant, to not open your door, to protect the privacy of your home. And all along, I've been thinking to myself, it feels disingenuous of me as an immigration lawyer who's long litigated against ICE to be teaching people their rights when we all know full well that they flagrantly violate those rights, period. And here we've seen that happen in our community, and I caution that I do not think this will be the last time. Like I said, I spent all day today supporting my team to litigate other habeas corpus cases for other community members. What I'm hoping for is that we can honor the extreme harm that befell Cristian and Joanna and Camila, the extreme harm that befell their families, their communities, the people who are just trying to help, who were standing by with PPE and meeting the basic needs of people who were legal observing and supporting through rapid response safety of children in the home. We need to honor the reverberating fear of calling for emergency support now that is going to put victims in the state at risk of unnecessary harm, people who otherwise would have called for help when they needed it. We need to honor all of that by heeding the calls to action that we've all heard tonight. We urge the city of Burlington to join us in calling attention to the recent request by the Vermont Human Rights Commission at the state level, which is empowered to investigate law enforcement in Vermont and routinely does so for our state legislature, to grant the authority to make an investigation of these events in public in order to satisfy important demands for transparency and accountability. We encourage the city lobbyists, we encourage counselors to encourage your constituents to please join us in also uplifting the slate of legislation already pending before the State House this session that will help us to collectively add more rights and protections to non-citizens at the community level, seek remedies when ICE predictably violates those rights, and to fund legal counsel so that there are lawyers available to help people walk these terrible systems and not make them walk them alone. Finally, I would like us to please take seriously Migrant Justice's calls to action to not only review the application of the fair and impartial policing policy in this instance and to use the available oversight mechanisms to conduct thorough reviews and create accountability where it is available, but to also think proactively about what it looks like to be a partner with us in this work. It's ironic to me that a city that represents leadership in restorative justice nationally is in a situation where we're coming together after this atrocity to talk together about what we can do, what we have the power to change to make our communities more safe. We could be practicing what we preach in terms of restorative practices. We could be coming together and working together on this issue. Together, the community and government institutions. I wonder, it was so striking to me that when the first hearing transpired in the Senate Judiciary Committee, that it was visually very stark that the Senate Judiciary Committee only called as witnesses leadership from law enforcement who were reporting on secondary, tertiary stories, right? When we have such a robust and generous group of eyewitness people available to give firsthand accounts, why weren't their perspectives lifted up from the very beginning? And really, I would be interested to speak with law enforcement leaders and city councilors about ways that we can help be a conduit. Part of what we do as lawyers in civil society who want to both find meaningful solutions with institutions, but also uplift the movement of the community, we can maybe help be a thought partner for you on how to foster dialogue. I wonder how all those decisions, if decisions were made differently, we wouldn't be sitting here today. And we offer ourselves as a resource, but know that we can't come to you today asking for an immigration legal remedy. Our community members who are directly impacted are just at the beginning of a very long, hard journey that I promise you will not be fair and impartial, nor will it enjoy process due. But where we do have control here in our sphere of power on the fair and impartial policing policy, on how it's written and how it's applied, I urge us to work together and honor the struggle of the people sitting behind me and beside me tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Martin Diaz. And again, thanks to all of our guests for being here this evening. At this time, and appreciate your all's patience in sticking around while I open the floor to my colleagues here on the council. First, to see if anyone has any questions for our guests here. I know sometimes it's difficult to ask a question without also making a comment, but I think the intention of this round at the moment is to try to ask any questions that we have of our guests. Again, once we are done with a round of questions, we'll open the floor again to councilors, as well as to you, Mayor, if you're so inclined to make any comments this evening. So with respect to any questions for our guests this evening, is there any councilor who first wants to get in the queue? understand that some folks may have comments, I think, in, Councilor Bergman?
I have lots of comments, but I'm going to try to make some questions here just to get clear.
Well, I think, why don't we?
No, I don't, you know, I know.
And we'll
I
be
wanna ask
flexible.
these are questions. This is like
Yes.
framed for this period of time. And
Yes.
these are actually miserable questions, right? And because I'm going to ask them knowing full well that I have heard for over many hours, you know, this call that says we shouldn't have been there. So I want to sort of recognize that, honor that, but the question, the tough, miserable question is, at any point, if we were there, right? So we're there, right? Pick a time in your wonderful timeline. I wish I had that previously. What do you think, in the range of activities, our officers should have done? And so if you haven't thought about that, you know, that's fair, right? But that's a question. You're there at the time, maybe rightfully, maybe in the gray area, maybe wrongfully, but okay, now we've got these choices. We've got these choices all along the way. And so that is a question that I have for migrant justice and for the attorneys in terms of that. For a similar question is for legal aid, and that is, okay, South Burlington doesn't help. ICE shouldn't even be there, so they're not helping. Our officers are there, again, whether right, you know, they're just there, this is the hypothetical. What should they do to help those children get connected or get out of there or get connected with those resources, right? If we were to have that, so that, you know, at the end of the day, I mean, whether it's the, you know, the only option isn't to pass that kid out of a window or something like that, right? And for the attorney, for Jill, so what right do Burlington police have with regard to the issuance of judicial warrants? We're on the scene, right? We've heard one line that says, you got no right. They get the warrant and, you know, fight it out some other time, some other place after they have, like, gone through their miserable stuff, right? But I don't actually believe that. I hope that actually Pike and his brief is speaking some good law, because I'm hoping that there is more right than we are uncomfortably, but actually empowered to act on. And so those are the three questions that I've got for you based on the testimony, and if this is not a good time to answer them, or you can only answer partially or something, that's totally fair. I think that I need, and I think that we need to have that, you know, that insight as well as those facts going forward in our review. So thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you, Councilor Bergman. Certainly, if any one of our panelists want to respond to that, please take the opportunity.
Sure. So starting with your first question, and I'll try to summarize it and you can confirm I'm understanding correctly, is what should officers have done differently? Is that a fair? Okay. I think they should have followed all of the policy that has been put in place through the fair and impartial policing policy, not colluded with immigration enforcement, not assaulted protesters. I think they should have followed the mayor's executive order and not used city time, energy, and resources on what, again, was a clear violation of their own policy against collaboration with ICE. Mm-hmm.
What that looks like, like on the ground, but I appreciate that.
Councilor Bergman, I'm not quite sure what Burlington Police could do, because Officer Briscoe told me there was nothing that the South Burlington Police could do. And I believe that I can't tell you that when ICE is on the scene, that the local law enforcement is allowed to go above them. I think it's an important question to ask the police chief, but more, I agree that start with following the policies. And I just want to say something to what Attorney Martin Diaz said, that we've gotten 20 requests for immigrant minor guardianship help in the last month, which is like 20% of what we've gotten in the last 16 months. Like, people are terrified that their families are going to be split apart and that they're not going to get back together. So, like, moving quickly here to restore confidence, to publicly restore confidence, is really important.
Thank you. I think we have to answer this question with, if things happen in Burlington, it's one thing for the South Burlington chief in there, but so anyway.
We got called by another family the same week in Burlington where there was an attempted ICE enforcement action, so it's going to happen.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you for your question about addressing the authority that state or local law enforcement would have to maybe intervene on, or to intervene on illegal action by a federal law enforcement agent. So this is an issue that is kind of dressed up in a separation of powers, constitutional law issues, right? And that has created unfortunate cover for the reality that that no one is above the law, not even law enforcement, and that there is criminal liability when an officer, no matter which agency they represent, is committing violence and violating the law. There might be special provisions where they're subject to liability because they're violating the law in their line of duty. There are many jurisdictions that have decided to clarify that liability over the last couple of years, have made it explicit that state and local law enforcement are indeed empowered to enforce the law against anyone who is violating it, which would include any law enforcement officers, not limited to, but including ICE. And many jurisdictions have taken this position. I understand we're in a predicament here because of our resource constraints, as a state, our heavy reliance on federal funding. My observation when I compare how we have responded, Vermont, and I look at other jurisdictions that are similarly aligned in terms of the political makeup, I see that we have been responsive of center. Our institutions have been responsive of center, sometimes in an explicit or implicit hope of not drawing attention to the jurisdiction and risking federal funding, right? That there's like this issue, this tension. And there's a lot of interesting scholarship happening studying whether or not that works. Spoiler alert, it doesn't. And I would suggest, like what you're talking about, there are many examples. There are jurisdictions where their municipalities are the ones creating new protections, putting limits on all law enforcement, including federal, are creating city funding for access to counsel so that there's even a lawyer available to help someone bring these challenges and not be disappeared. There are municipalities that are affirmatively litigating, right? They're not waiting for something horrible to happen and then sue after. They are filing suit affirmatively to protect their statuses as sanctuary cities. There's a whole range that can be done. And so my position would be that there already exists authority for state and local law enforcement to enforce the law against federal agents when they are acting illegally. And as lawmakers, you have the power to make that authority and that imperative even more clear.
Thank you. I would really hope that we can partner to actualize what you've just talked about. It's very important to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Bergman. And I understand again that some folks here may have both questions and comments. I guess the ask here for this first round is that if anyone has some very clear questions, I'd like to turn to those first because I think that some of the answers may help to further along some of the comments afterwards. If there are no, you have some questions here, Councillor Singh, and then Councillor Broderick. Okay, so why don't we go to you, Councillor Singh, and then we'll go to Councillor Broderick.
Thank you, and I'm going to kind of dovetail off of my colleague, Councillor Bergman. You know, when we're talking about this, and it's just brought to my, who would bring a case against the ICE agent that, you know, used their authority illegally by entering this property and taking these people, violating their Fifth Amendment right to privacy? Who would bring that case?
Me.
Okay.
Well, I mean, Christian, right? Christian and Joanna and Camila, they're the plaintiffs, right? They're the people, the petitioners who sought judicial review. And even though they got their relief, are still here giving of themselves so generously so that we all can have this debrief without pay or any, I'm like there isn't an amount of gratitude I could express to Christian.
Have these cases been successful
Yes.
against ICE agents? And
Yes, absolutely. So we name, it's typically not that you're seeking a remedy, like you're not seeking to recover from a particular ICE agent, or we're not seeking, we're not using our intervention to seek one-to-one accountability from the one agent who may be harmed, but the institutions, the agencies.
And I understand that, and so I want to follow up on that is, you know, would it be a deterrent to an ICE agent if they were prosecuted to the full extent of any violations that they've perpetrated in a community?
That's a fair question. There are a couple of examples from our own community that illustrate the general observation nationwide that when ICE's job gets hard, they kind of pivot and move on to other jurisdictions. So we were just meeting with Department of Corrections, talking about our legal work with them, with detainees who are in custody by them, and they even mentioned that we were all looking at the number of detainees over the year has been trending down over time, and part of the theory of why that's happening is that our ability to seek such quick and decisive judicial checks on ICE illegal activities in our state has made Vermont a less attractive place to be operating in because we have such a deep bench here and so many amazing advocates ready to spring into action. Similarly, earlier, some of our community members talked about their advocacy in the airport, trying to create some transparency and accountability around transportation of detainees through the airport. And there was advocacy, there was awareness building, and now we notice that the vans are not going to the Burlington airport. I mean, reasonable minds differ on whether or not that was harm reduction, because now what we find is people are getting driven to other airports further out of state. But what I will say is there's a general observation among the bar that if ICE has 50 states to choose from, and so when you make things, when you hold them accountable, hold them to their burden, they tend to pivot.
Yep. So would you say we are doing a good job making it hard? It's from a legal aspect is where ICE seems to back down in most instances.
I mean, I don't want to blow our trumpet too hard. No, but I mean, it is amazing. There's an incredible, I will blow my trumpet very hard. No, it's not me at all. I just sit and work with spreadsheets. There's an amazing group of staff attorneys across the 5 agencies who are bolstered by the rapid responders that you see sitting everywhere else. And together, with the bravery of the petitioners who just put it all out there, the judiciary is holding the line on democracy right now.
And I appreciate your hard work. I also wanted to ask about, where we've seen these restrictions be put on ICE enforcement in other state and other municipal areas. Have those been tested on the ground? And what are the results of those situations?
I haven't heard of any major cases testing implementation yet, but what we have seen, any judicial litigation that has been initiated by the Immigration Justice Bar nationally, whether it was the immediate and unceremonial revocation of our funding to provide universal rep to any under 18s in removal proceedings in Vermont. We immediately sued in the Ninth Circuit about that. Whether it's suing the administration over any of its revocations of immigration status, its due process violations, just over and over and over and over and over again, federal district courts nationwide in many circuits are absolutely hearing and make findings of fact of how illegal ICE's operations are. So I would hope that the geniuses behind all of those models, I did not come up with them. I am a direct services provider. ACLU created the model for Vermont, and now we just implement it. I have every reason to believe that they're devising these strategies from an informed place.
And are they giving advice to municipalities on the type of things that they should put into their toolbox, so to speak?
I'm so glad you asked. The American Immigration Council and a number of other organizations do run technical assistance. There's a lot of training and technical assistance programs that is available. We are not walking through this alone. I believe that migrant justice's incredible embracing of technical assistance at the national level is what allowed them to set up their incredible rapid response work so quickly. And there's similar frameworks popping up to offer technical assistance to cities nationwide. There's one program I want to highlight for you, the Cities and Counties for Citizenship program. That is a program that regions, municipalities can apply for on their own or in coalition with other neighbors to be formally trained as part of a class of municipalities that are looking to use their authority fully to the fullest extent possible to keep their community safe. So that is a program that I highly recommend and would be happy to chat with the right people about. There's a number of other sources of TA, but that's the one I'll highlight now.
Well, I very much appreciate your hard work. I'll be done with the questions. I just wanted to say to Christian, as an American, as a Burlingtonian, as a Vermonter, I'm sorry for what happened to your family and your loved ones.
Thank you, Councillor Singh. Councillor Broderick?
Thank you. This question's probably for migrant justice. If you can, I'm hoping if you could speak to some examples of attempted ICE enforcement actions in Vermont before or since March 11th, where in contrast to what happened on Dorset Street, there was little to no local and state law enforcement presence, and the presence that we saw on Dorset Street, and speak to if there was contrast in terms of violence against the community, as well as differences in ICE's success in their operations.
Yeah, absolutely, I can speak to that. Recognizing it's getting a little late in the evening, we'll just give one example. We can talk more later if you want more. I think a very clear example happened 2 days before the events of the 11th, so that would have been Monday the 9th. In a similar situation, we got a call to our emergency line from a community member who reported a potential ICE enforcement activity. And we mobilized to the scene, confirmed that it was true, because again, we follow very specific procedures internally about when we do or don't share suspected information. The bottom line is unless we can confirm it 100%, we won't share it publicly. So on the 9th, we were able to 100% confirm there was an attempted ICE detention. We activated the rapid response network and arrived on scene. And, I recognize a number of faces from the room, so if you could correct my guess, but I believe about 80 or so people showed up. Yeah, around 80 or so people showed up. Again, this was actually in Burlington on Pine Street. When we arrived, community members lined up in front of the building and just held the space. We saw a couple of different local police vehicles drive by, not stop or anything. And we also saw an undercover ICE vehicle circling again and again for just over an hour. At a certain point, seeing, I believe, the strong and unified presence of allied community members in solidarity with the people inside the home, the officer left. There was no face-to-face interactions with immigration enforcement after the initial interaction that led to that phone call. We didn't have any face-to-face communication with local or state law enforcement, and the situation ended with ICE turning its tail and running, community members holding the space, meeting each other, continuing to organize in the moment, and the person who was originally being targeted free. That is one very specific example that I can share.
Yeah, thank you. And I highly recommend you share as many examples as you're willing to share with the full council. I think exemplifying that contrast is very important. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Broderick. Councilor Carpenter?
Thanks. I'm just curious, after you mobilize your members and they arrive at the scene, is there any coordination, any strategy that's shared among the members? I mean, I observe that having 200 people on Dorset Street is a lot to manage, and so I'm just curious that part of the movement, and it sort of tags on maybe a little bit of Councilor Broderick's sort of who do you talk to about keeping it calm, or I'm just trying to figure that out.
Sure. So the main leadership that we follow in actions like this is that of the person who's most impacted. That is a core guiding principle of our organization. We are a base organization that is led by and driven by the most impacted members of our community. So throughout the day, we were in contact with Christian, with Joanna, with Camila, with their family members to coordinate. And we helped share their wants, their feelings, their desires with the people who are outside. A lot of the coordination on scene bubbled up very naturally. A lot of the people who were present are members of our Rapid Response Network, but a lot of them also aren't. We operate within a model of having, a statewide rapid response network with coordinated infrastructure. We do trainings. We've done more than 50 over the last year at this point, as kind of the core central infrastructure. However, this kind of organizing can't only be happening on a state level, right? So individual towns, counties, neighborhoods have their own rapid response networks where they share information, confirm it, share it with us, and then also share information from us, right? So it's this network of overlapping circles of organizing. And so again, a lot of the organizing that day was done under the leadership of Migrant Justice. A lot of it also wasn't. I would say it was a community effort. I don't know if that quite answers your question, but.
It does, and again, it was sort of in another circumstance, how do you encourage law enforcement to have communication with the people that have come on site through the rapid response? They're notified and they're there. In this circumstance, Burlington was notified that 200 people have gathered in South Burlington and Dorset Street. I obviously don't know all the other communications, and I was just sort of asking it kind of from your side. Burlington can talk to South Burlington, who really started it, ICE perhaps, and I'm just sort of curious, how communication channels run.
I'm sorry, Counselor, I'm not sure I understand your question exactly.
So if I may clarify,
Yeah.
Are you asking about whether there's any police liaison as part of the organizing strategy?
That would be a response. I mean, the police arrive, there's 200 people. How do you have a communication and with whom? How does that happen?
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for the translation. Yeah, we have police liaisons on scene. There were several members of the migrant justice team on scene throughout the day who were liaising with officers. I personally was organizing from offsite for a lot of the day, so I can't really speak to what that looked like before about 2:30. I have colleagues who could talk about it. But yes, we have police liaisons. We communicated with various agencies, talked with the state legislators who were there, helped facilitate communication between the people inside and the protesters, kind of all of the above.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Carpenter. Councilor Sanchez-Parkins.
Hi, everyone. Primeramente quiero agradecerte, Cristian, por venir, por tomar el riesgo de venir y decirnos tu historia. Gracias. Y gracias por los líderes de Migrant Justice por estar aquí. Gracias, Abel, por la traducción. I do have a question, but I feel uncomfortable with the question first. So I'd like to share some comments. This is my first meeting as a city councilor, and so I am just so deeply grateful that to kick off this journey with you all. Thank you for being here. Thank you for everyone who's come out. Many of you have been here multiple times already sharing your stories, so I just want to really thank you for that. There was one individual that during public comment said, "I'm terrified of speaking in public." I just want to say thank you for being here. Thank you for speaking. Thank you for sharing your experience. I'm, again, very grateful that I don't feel like I'm just here with these folks in the table, but that we're here in community, working towards addressing these issues. I also want to say thank you for those who uplifted the history of not only the police departments, but just in general, the structures that are within our country. It made me think about how we don't take these things personal. The police department is not just the folks here, and thank you, Chief Burke, for being here. It's a long-standing tradition of discrimination, of harassment, of policing of Black and brown bodies. And I think that that is so important as we address some of these issues, that it's not always just personal, that we need to be able to put aside some of our egos, some of our just being sensitive, but really think about the structures that are being set in place that are harming our community. So uplifting that history, I think, is really important so that we can have a bigger context as we're thinking about moving forward. I also want to uplift the history of those who are out in the community, who are raising your voices. If it wasn't for you, if it wasn't for folks like you all here, I would not be sitting in this chair. I would not be sitting in this chair. Attorney Prine, the work that you do, I had a custodial plan with my family. So it was through the work that you all do that I'm able to sit at this table. So thank you. I also want to thank the individual that talked about capturing our stories and what is happening in our country, not only professionally, but I think many of us who are able to pick up a phone and capture what is happening. Again, structurally, the erasure of our stories and our histories continues to happen, and we need to be able to capture those stories and those experiences. So your stories matter. It's not just the data that we're going to collect. And so I really, again, thank you for sharing those stories, again, rooted in what our communities and grassroots efforts are all about, sharing our stories and uplifting them and valuing just as much as the data and the research that is out there. There was a question by an individual, I believe it was Dee Graham, that said, "What are you doing?" And they looked at us and said, "What are you doing?" And I really took that question at heart because, again, I'm deeply grateful for the people who are coming out here to retell their stories, their trauma, and I'm gonna take that question seriously because I don't take your stories for granted. And so I jotted down a few things that I wanna specifically begin to think about. First and foremost, I wanna closely follow the investigations and closely analyze the results. I want to make sure to take a lot of the recommendations that you all have already outlined, the hours and hours that I know has gone into the analysis and recommendations that you all have shared. So thank you for that. I want to hold each other accountable, not only in the police department, but across our city. What are we doing with the resources that we have? The few resources that we have, we need to make sure that we're using them for the betterment of our community. I want to better understand how the city is serving our immigrant community and how we are thinking beyond those of you who are already out there in the ground, like how are we utilizing our city resources to support our community? I want to continue to follow the Police Commission and the Public Safety Committee because those two bodies are also making decisions and thinking about how to move forward with this work. We are in a search right now for a new chief of police, and I want to be able to follow that closely as well. Several times it was mentioned how we already have policy set in place. I want to think about how we are following through with that policy. As Burlingtonians, we're really good at coming up with some pretty cool policy. And a lot of people come here to work here because we have great systems in place. I want to think about how are we holding that policy and how are we holding each other accountable and how it's showing up in our culture and how we treat each other and how it's being practiced. So thank you again for coming out here. And it just really made me think about let's not be fragile. Let's put egos aside and really think about, several of you mentioned, we really are role models for the community, but also for the nation and how we can continue to support our immigrants. My question that I'll put out there if I am able to do that, I'd love to hear from you all who are directly supporting immigrant families and communities. What are the resources currently that you're seeing the city is investing in to support immigrant communities? What is the most helpful thing, and or what could the city be doing with our resources to support?
Thank you, Councilor Sanchez-Parkinson. If any of our panelists have a response to that, and I would welcome your answering it now. I also am mindful of your time and the hour, so I know that that's a big question.
The hardest thing, Councilor Sanchez-Parkinson, is we could all use money, but the city doesn't have any money. I would say taking this seriously and turning the tide is the best thing that you could do because people are terrified. I don't know if people have other answers, but taking this seriously and turning the tide is within your power and isn't going to cost more money.
I would say that that is a really good question, and it's one that takes a lot of time to answer. You know, obviously I'm the one on the mic today, but I'm not one of the most impacted people, and so come by our office, let's set up a time for you to meet with your constituents, to meet with the people in our community, to speak directly with them about, you know, the resources that people are receiving, but also the needs that we're continuing to see not get met.
And from my perspective as an attorney and a systems advocate, I would encourage the city to show leadership in filling the very loud vacuum of silence left open by the state administration. The state administration has a workflow for getting out good information, recommended resources, cutting through noise. We saw it happen in COVID-19. And the state is choosing not to use that power, that authority, that positionality to be myth-busting, to be combating fear-mongering, to make sure that people know who to call when they need help. And I think there are some opportunities, some ideas, some resource sharing that could happen where the city could help be a leader for Vermont in cutting through the noise and getting out some good information for people who are honestly like just trying to go to the grocery store and get to the health clinic right now. And you could be a part of making that safer. So thank you for asking.
Thank you. Any other? Okay. I think we can turn to the comment round now, if that makes sense. I understand there may still be some questions interspersed with that, but I think we would turn now to sort of the second round, so to speak, if that's okay with other councilors. All right, and Mayor, I saw your hand up, so I think I would turn to you first, and then happy to turn back to other councilors.
Thank you, Councilor Travers, and I just want to appreciate having the opportunity to also engage with the community, as I'm not a member of this body, and so I sit here and offer perspective, trying to respect this is their deliberative space as the administration. But what I really want to reflect back is first, I just want to acknowledge and express a lot of gratitude because we are asking community advocacy organizations for triple work here, even as the city of Burlington right now tonight. You are not only been asked to do double labor with the state legislature, with their hearings, and then our hearings in South Burlington, triple the layers of work, but you've already articulated that every single day that goes by, you are providing direct aid, legal support, mutual aid to folks who are living in fear. And I do appreciate, I want to underscore and double down on that fear is the policy. And I said this in my speech on Monday night, which has nothing to do with this necessarily directly, but we can do things here differently in Burlington, and that is certainly should be our direct and clear priority right now as a city, not only as the largest city in Vermont, but to your point, Attorney Martin Diaz, around filling the void that the state has left. Now, doing that, I hear tonight from community members, and I am reminded about how we need to very much center those most impacted, those who are ultimately living in fear. And Christian, I wish so badly I could speak Spanish because I feel very inadequate, so I want to acknowledge and I'll pause, of course, if translation is available. But I just want to appreciate that it is difficult to come and reshare trauma in front of cameras, in front of the entire community. It is so fresh, and I cannot even imagine the pain, and I want to acknowledge that first and most directly. That was probably too much to translate oh, I can't see that profile, so I was just, okay, I appreciate that. I should also slow down now knowing that. So again, I appreciate that because I think one of the things, Burlington is a deeply engaged community, but we cannot lose sight of those who are living in fear every single day and are withdrawing from our community, as you all have articulated. I also want to reflect back. I hear the call for the specificity of review of things, policies that predate my time, policies that I have instituted, including my executive order. I hear the offers of partnership, which I deeply appreciate. We have worked as partners since Trump got elected again. I've appreciated that work since day, whatever that was, November 2024, really. And these are very unsettling and unprecedented times, and we will keep trying to do better and do better. I also take very seriously the trust that has been deeply broken, and I do not take that lightly. I spent the first 2 years as mayor consciously trying to rebuild a broken community safety system with trust at the core for everyone, and it breaks my heart that we have, when ICE has engaged and we have responded as we've responded, we've lost ground, and I want to make sure we acknowledge that publicly. I also hear the calls for proactive thinking, accountability, and again, back to partnership. That is the work we are committed to doing. And finally, while we don't have a lot of resources, and I appreciate that acknowledgement, we do have the resource of time where we spend our time and focus and where we prioritize the work as the administration. So this is the priority. And I'm not going to speak to the details here, but the investigation of the use of force is underway. Information is coming very soon on this. internally, as well as the policy reviews, but I want to open up partnership to explore this more. And again, I don't want to take more time here, but I just want to appreciate folks coming here tonight, including all of the community members. I spoke to the mutual aid parts that are so strong about Burlington also on Monday night. And I hear folks, I hear the pain, and I know I was watching right alongside you. We have a lot of work ahead of us. We're in the middle of it, and more to come very soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
If I may, very briefly.
Sure.
Can I ask specifically for a timeline about the review process, when we might expect information, on behalf of migrant justice, but also asking personally as someone who was assaulted by an officer?
Of course. I was going to mention this, but I was trying to be measured in my response to reflective of trying to do deep listening tonight. So the Burlington Police Department is near its completion of the use of force, which is per our policy, which we went into on whatever night that was in March. I will do my own independent review per an executive order that stands for mayors of the city under the prior administration. Mayor Weinberger, I don't forget, 2021, I believe, is when that executive order was created. I am invoking that to do my own independent review once I receive BPD's use of force. I anticipate that within the next several days, and I need to sit with that information myself as mayor, and so that will take, I can't do that in a day, so I plan to take about 2 weeks or so to do that, to expedite this as quickly as possible. At the same time, we are trying to also, we will be looking at all those policies I mentioned before, the FIP, my own executive order, other things we should be looking at. And I've already directed BPD to do an after-action review with those similar themes separate from the use of force.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you. Now, councilors, anyone else want to get in the queue? Yep, we'll go Councilor Schechter, and then Councilor Broderick will come back to you, and then Councilor McKnight. Actually, why don't we, let's go with councilors that have not been, so we'll go Councilor Schechter and then McKnight, and then anyone who has not been heard a first time. And then Councilor Grant. Okay, Councilor Schechter.
Thank you, President Travers. Thank you to everyone who's shown up tonight. I'm grateful we've had this opportunity. Thank you so much to our community partners for, I echo what the mayor just shared, that the day in and day out work you all are doing is of critical importance, and to take the time out of your evenings, your precious evenings where you're probably usually still working, to be here tonight means a lot and is a really important part of us really, as so many have said tonight, taking seriously what happened on March 11th and how we as a city can move forward from it stronger and better prepared to be responsive the next time this inevitably comes back. I want to just be so clear how seriously I take this, and I think I speak for all of my colleagues as well as the administration, that this is a real priority in getting to the bottom of it, doing what we can to prevent it from happening again or going differently the next time, and really working so hard to protect our whole community and minimize harm in every way we can. Christian, I want to say thank you for your testimony. It's so brave, and it's so meaningful to have you here tonight, so thank you. The stories that you shared and your experience in the home is not surprising, but so evident of such rampant dehumanization that has no place in our city, in our country, in our world, and I'm so sorry that you experienced that. It's horrifying to hear, and yet so important for us to bear witness to and be with you in it. So thank you for that opportunity and for being here tonight. And I also want to extend a warm welcome to Councilor Sanchez Parkinson, who is a dear friend, so I get a little emotional, because it feels a little divine that we have your voice and your presence with everything our city is navigating right now. And I'm so grateful that you're part of this body, and that we get to lean on you as a colleague. So welcome, and thanks for diving right in. I had just a couple quick questions. One is just a clarification that, Christian, when you shared your experience in the House and your talks of the officers, I think I know that this is true, but I want to make sure that there was not Burlington police present in the House. It was ICE officers and others. It was Burlington police were not in the home.
Sí, la pregunta es que cuando estabas en la casa, cuando los agentes entraron, fue solamente de la migra, ¿verdad? O sea, no era policía local, especialmente de Burlington.
Sí, solo eran agentes de migración.
Yeah, it was just the immigration officers.
Thank you. And I also wanted to share, I think all of you brought so many great requests as a city for what we should be taking into account as we process this and figure out the path forward. And I was wondering if you could indulge us with sharing those in writing. I'd really love to be able to refer back to them and, you know, in our efforts to take this seriously, to have them to just, so whether that's sending them via email to President Travers that he can share with all of us, or I'd love to sort of use those as one of the many North Stars that we're working towards as we think about where we go from here. Great. That would be great. That is all I had for now, but just know, I assure you, the last thing I wanted to say is, we do have limited resources. I appreciate Councilor Sanchez-Parkinson's question about what can we do, how we're allocating our resources. But in addition to having a voice and to being advocates, we do also have policy that we can enact and adjust in response that I think is a lever that I hear all of us being committed to exploring, both where there's failures in our existing policy, where we're perhaps not living into our policies, and what policies we should be thinking about enacting, what other municipalities are doing. So I'd love to follow up on those resources as well. And I think that's where we really do have power here to make some change. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Schachter. Councilor Brown-McKnight, and then Grant.
Thank you all so much for being here. I'm echoing the gratitude for this deep expertise that you bring to the table, and I want to share my commitment to being really eager to work together and take fast action on your recommendations, because I agree that's what we need. I want to especially thank Christian for being here, and also just again say I am so deeply sorry that this happened to you in our community, and I want to commend the courage that it took you to show up here. You know, that courage is of a magnitude that I will probably never understand, and I'm also so glad that you are here safe with us tonight, because that outcome was not guaranteed, and I'm extremely grateful for that. You do not deserve to be treated like this. No one does. Immigrants are the best of us in this state and in this country, and you are what makes this community special. So thank you. Smuggling a small child out of a home surrounded by violent men sounds like something that would happen in a lawless, war-torn situation, but here we are. It's happening in suburban Vermont, and this incident is far from the only time it has happened. Every American and every Vermonter should be ashamed of what happened to you there and what happened to everyone. I am absolutely ashamed of what happened, and it was all funded by our tax dollars, which just blows my mind. Tonight, I think it's important that we send a clear message about the action that we are all taking as a body. But I also think it's important that we directly send a message to the ICE agents that are working in our state. And I want to say something that I think maybe it's important you hear from me, because maybe you'll listen to me. I am a nice white lady who was brought up going to Sunday school. So ICE agents, maybe you think women like me should be on your side. You might think it's my job to uphold your violent authority, but it is not. My job is to protect my community from you. So, ICE agents, I want you to hear me loud and clear. You are a stain on our nation's history. Your total disregard for our Constitution is disgusting, and you deserve to be brought to justice for your unlawful actions against our neighbors, against a toddler. Does abusing children make you feel big and strong? You are a bunch of gross, pathetic losers, and you are not welcome here in Vermont or in Burlington. And also to our Burlington Police Department. Thank you for being here, Chief Burke. I really want to partner with you on a better path forward. But in order to do that, we absolutely need to develop a shared understanding that you cannot be on the same team as these embarrassing goons who are abusing their power and breaking the law. That does not work. That cannot be the path forward. Our police department can have no supporting role in these violent, unjust situations, full stop. This was a clear failure, mistakes were made, and we all need to address them with accountability. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. We'll go to Councillor Grant.
Okay, thank you everyone for being here. There is so much on my mind. I'm not wasting my time addressing ICE because we know the problem with ICE. It's very clear. We have to focus on what happened with the involvement of our local law enforcement. Our local law enforcement, Jim Morrison, Governor Scott, everyone was very unified in their opinion of the behavior of ICE. Reckless, incompetent, unnecessary, and so on. But that's a distraction, right? It's the truth, but it's also a distraction around, we can say over and over again, we could not control the behavior of ICE. But as I mentioned at our March 23rd meeting, we need to control the behavior of our agencies. We have policies. And what happened that day, it's very clear. So I want to be, because I've had to deal with that in the realm of public and community safety for 6 years now. I started getting involved in public safety after some particularly violent incidents involving our police officers here in Burlington, in particular the Milley brothers case. We came out with a new and better use of force policy. It didn't change the fact that what was in place at the time of the incident was violated 6 ways to Sunday. So we need to be honest when we have those conversations. I am waiting for the reporting on the use of force to be completed. But I do feel that the very fact that individuals were taken who were not listed on a criminal warrant, that to me is just that fact alone is a violation of FIP, because it would not have happened if these individuals were white or white presenting. It wouldn't have. And those who know, know. We have seen here what is a statewide, not just Burlington, statewide, countrywide failure to do the best job we could do with regards to oversight and accountability. People stop showing up. So my plea to the public as a whole is you have to continue to show up. We need complaints filed with the Burlington PD. We need complaints filed with the South Burlington PD. We need the complaints filed with VSP, Vermont State Police. We need letters to Jim Morrison and Governor Scott. We need also to be engaging with the Vermont Criminal Justice Council. We need some sort of review over the fact that in all the timelines that have been presented, there isn't anyone who said that someone looked at the criminal warrant and didn't make an effort to say who's in the house, are they on the warrant, and whoever is not on the warrant, can they come out safely? I haven't heard that in all the timelines. And we need to understand why that didn't happen. That would have been the responsibility, in my mind, of with local law enforcement. So we need that conversation. We need a lot of conversations to say as we look at this debrief to really be sincere. Now, I went to Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission has these quarterly meetings of electeds, and I got into it with a South Burlington counselor who denied FIP violation was an issue and said that local law enforcement was there to protect the protesters against themselves. Said that out loud, double, tripled down on it. So not everyone sees this the way we do. And that is why we cannot get tired. People stop showing up at commission meetings. People stop talking about oversight and accountability at city council meetings. People got burned out. We can't get burned out. We see what's happening nationally. I was very concerned that what I saw, and I continue to watch videos that people are sending me, was that there didn't seem to be, it was like police weren't watching and seeing what we were seeing. It just seemed like there was a lack of preparedness. And that's gravely concerning because we can't have that again. And we know it will happen again. And we know it's, to points that were brought up earlier, we cannot allow people to be taken, especially if they end up being taken out of state. We know what's happening. I will leave it there. And I just hope that people who say the right things, but when it comes to voting, to encourage people to vote a certain way, they're not always there. And then criticize those that don't do something that's not deemed politically expedient. And that's also what we're up against. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Grant. Councilor Bergman, if you don't mind, just before going to the second round, I just have a brief question that's come to mind here that I'd like to ask our panelists here. And again, I want to be mindful and respectful of the time. It's sort of a follow-up question to what I believe Councilor Carpenter was asking earlier this evening. And the question is really this, and I may not be that articulate about it because it's somewhat off the cuff, but obviously, there is immense value that all of you have spoken to the rapid response model that Migrant Justice has and has developed, and the assistance that's brought to so many here in the community. Obviously, the one difference between a rapid response model and, say, a planned protest, right, is if there's a planned protest, there's a permit filed, there's an opportunity to meet with officials, there's sometimes discussions between the protest organization and the police department and the fire department. There's an understanding as to exactly sort of who is going to be where and why and what will happen if certain lines are crossed or are not crossed, and so on and so forth. And not only does the lack of time associated with a rapid response not allow for this here, but also the total lack of knowledge about where this is going to occur on a day-to-day basis doesn't allow for that kind of engagement. It happened to be in South Burlington on March 11th, where South Burlington was in command there. If it happened in Burlington, the Burlington Police Department could be at command if local police showed up, right? And I understand the concern about police showing up at the ask of ICE officers, but I think we also have to be mindful of the fact that if ICE doesn't call, a community member very well may call, someone else may call. There are reasons where local police may show up at a scene along these circumstances, and depending on where it is, that department is the one who's going to be responding. And I guess my question is, well, before getting to the question, right, I don't know the extent to which the Winooski Police Department, the Burlington Police Department, the South Burlington Police Department, the Vermont State Police, right, the Bristol Police Department, Shelburne Police Department, you go down the line of where these actions could actually take place. I don't know the extent to which they are aware of the full scope of how the migrant justice rapid response model operates. I don't know of the extent to which they're aware of, and I was very glad to hear that there are police liaisons who are trained, who are part of the rapid response model, but I'm wondering what's the extent to which local police departments and the state police are aware of the fact that those police liaisons are there, that they know that if they were to get to the scene, that those individuals are there to connect with and speak with. Attorney Prine, like, I'm wondering of the extent to which our police departments here in Chittenden County are aware of your services and the fact that if there is a minor that's in there, that they know that someone like you or other guardians are going to show up at the scene, right? Because I do think that one of the things that may have been missing here was, and that one of the things that could be helpful when this inevitably does happen again, is more know-how and knowledge on behalf of local and state law enforcement about who the players are at the scene and the roles that they have. And I'm curious if you have any thoughts or answers in that regard. And I suppose that's a question for everyone here. I know that I landed it with you most recently here, Attorney Prine, but.
I tried talking to law enforcement, and it was not effective. Both the South Burlington officer in charge and the ICE officer in charge. So I identified myself. I reminded them of policies. It was not effective. So I was thinking you were going down a different road, which is maybe if we got ICE to tell us ahead of time before they did an enforcement action and they asked for a permit like everyone has to before a protest,
sure.
since we know there's going to be one, it would be a more effective way to deal with all this.
Yeah. I guess my question is more, and I appreciate and am deeply disturbed by your testimony with respect to the lack of response and you're connecting with them that evening. I guess my question is more, do you know, like South Burlington Police, for example, are they even aware that Vermont Legal Aid is providing these services? Are they aware that there's potentially a guardian? Are they aware that Barb Prine is likely on site, such that if they find out that a minor's in there, to the extent we wanted to ask our law enforcement to be more proactive about finding the guardian, right, and the folks that are going to help children get out there, to the extent we wanted local law enforcement to be more proactive about finding the migrant justice police liaison, to sort of develop that connection and open channels of communication. Do our police departments know that folks are likely there as a part of this rapid response model for them to be able to connect with? I know they found out day of. I'm wondering, do they know beforehand? And what can we do to get law enforcement more aware of who all the folks, who all of you are, and all the roles that you're playing in these instances?
President Travers, if I may, because I know how my colleagues here showed up today, and I can't in good conscience let them carry the emotional burden of saying what I would like to just say to start. I think that that's a question for Chief Burke, A of all. B of all, I appreciate where the question is coming from, but it does, it feels very incongruent with many other individuals' recognition of the volume of unpaid labor that civil society and community groups are performing for the city at this stage without any contribution of funding from the city. I mean, we got a small grant from the REIB, and we were very grateful for that. It was $500 toward our operating budget last year. The state has never appropriated for immigration legal aid. And everyone is here because we believe that this is important and that good work can be done. And so I would urge our partners in position of power, one of the most frequently asked questions we get is, how can we help? Well, as hopefully many of you know, because I subscribed you to my newsletter with or without your permission, I blog fastidiously about all of the questions that you just asked. And so we have made a very, very detailed record to all of you about how things work and who the contacts are and how you can be helpful. The reason we're doing it is so that you will read that and then take action. And so my hope is that just to take some of the heat off of my colleagues here who can respond, like, please, I think we should shift the burden away from the underpaid civil society people working 100 hours a week and think about how our institutions can take responsibility for making sure that information is circulating.
Yeah, and thank you for that. Just before turning to other folks, to be clear, my question was by no means intended to place heat on anyone for not doing more in this regard. And so if it came off that way, my apologies. I'm certainly not asking for any one of the organizations here to do any more than you already are, which is well above and beyond anything that our community should expect of you. So if it came off that way, that was not the intention. I think if the obligation was on anyone to learn more about you all, right, it would be on law enforcement and other partners to make that proactive outreach. I'm just curious, and I think you're probably right, Attorney Martin-Diaz, that the questions are for those law enforcement officials about their awareness of the work that you all are doing. I was simply curious about whether or not, from your all's perspective, what are your thoughts with respect to those questions? Without, it's not a heated question.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is, that was exactly my first thought as well, is I think the question is more for law enforcement officers of what they're aware of and how much they've been paying attention to everything we've been saying publicly for a month, 6 months, 6 years, 15 years since migrant justice has been founded, right? I would love to hear from law enforcement, their understanding. At the end of the day, solo el pueblo salva al pueblo, right? Where communities are organizing to keep ourselves safe, and
understood.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have a quippy answer, but it was very much along the lines of what Jill just shared.
No, that's helpful. Thank you. I had Councilor Bergman next, and then Broderick, and then Sanchez Parkinson.
Thank you. I have no doubt that ICE is engaging in state terrorism against the people of this nation, but the question we have to answer is what our own participation and assistance is in that horror. And I have reviewed the news and publicly available video, and it appears to me that our response failed our commitment to the values we have to protect the exercise of the First Amendment and First Amendment rights, and it was a failure of planning and execution, especially with regards to the bringing of the 3 illegally arrested persons into ICE vehicles, the cars driving away, and then the opening of Dorset Street in the face of day-long, heartfelt determination of hundreds of community members committed to protecting those people. The videos and news and people's testimony tell me that as it actually happened, the use of our officers did not ensure the protection of the First Amendment rights of protesters or protectors, including the right to engage in peaceful civil disobedience without being subjected to being thrown on the ground, pepper sprayed, and flashbanged at close range. I believe that our response failed our commitment to the values underlying the FIP, that we will not aid in the arrest of our undocumented neighbors or those seeking asylum or refuge, that we will not be commandeered against our will, against our values to participate in a racist, xenophobic, imperialist crusade engineered by fascists like Trump, Miller, Hegseth, and Rubio. It is clear to me that the employment of local law enforcement, including our own officers, facilitated the removal of 3 persons and helped terrorize their children, 3 valued members of our community who were not even named in the warrant or subject to it. Now, I stated on March 23rd that I didn't want our police to act like Bull Connor's police force, and I said I was sure our police department didn't want that either, but that we needed to make sure, because what I saw in the videos had shaken that belief. But I heard that people didn't know what I was talking about when I mentioned Bill Connor. So the old man in me says, well, under Bull Connor, the head of the Birmingham, Alabama Police Department, on April 12th, about 50 years ago, or 60 years ago, 1963, the police made a mass arrest and brutally attacked civil rights demonstrators. Dr. King was one of those arrested, and he wrote his famous letter from the Birmingham jail during his incarceration. The police were brutal. Their dogs bit people. People were slammed into walls from the force of water, fired at them from water hoses. Officers grabbed people, they beat them, and then they arrested them. And Bull Connor even operated under the color of law because the demonstrators were violating an injunction against the march. Now, I was almost 10 years old then, and I watched it on the news. I read about it in the papers. It is not dead history to me, but it's real life, and I don't ever want to touch anything, and I have anything I touch be a part of a legacy like that, ever. So I need our review of March 11th to result in policies and practices that result in real protections for people, real protections against state-sponsored violence, real accountability. And this means many reviews, not only regarding the investigations into claims of excessive force and violations of policies, so we all know that they are thorough, fair, and consider the harm caused, but also what actions could have been taken by BPD officers to not assist ICE when they detained the 3 people who were not on the warrant, including looking into the cases and actions that Pike Porter mentioned in his brief, and then actually adopting them. What different operational tactics should have been employed to properly deal with community members on the scene engaging in civil nonviolent resistance? Because, like I said on the 23rd, when people commit civil disobedience, they should expect to be arrested, but not beaten, even if they're blocking vehicles. I need to know that our deployments, including but not limited to mutual aid agreements, don't lead to the same results in the future, and this includes deciding on not participating in mutual aid involving ICE operations. This includes looking at the command and control of BPD officers who are deployed and the operational guidelines concerning crowd control and protecting constitutional rights of assembly and speech, even when ICE is not involved. And then developing the training to ensure compliance. Migrant justice, your timeline and your demands are very instructive in this. All these things I'm asking have been asked, from the audience. But finally, we also need to drill down into the details of the failure to adhere to the city's fair and impartial policing policy and make the changes that are necessary, along with the adherence to the mayor's executive order and our own resolution on ICE enforcement. This is a lot of work, but the fate of the soul of our city is at stake, and we need to rise to this challenge. And to meet it, I actually suggest that the council president, the mayor, and our party's co-chairs meet immediately to create the many public reviews that we need. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Bergman. Councilor Broderick.
Thank you. And obviously, first of all, thank you to the community for coming out once again and for all of the work that you all do in protecting our neighbors, especially where the state and local government, and it's obviously the federal government, fail to protect the people. We should be striving to be a city that defends the humanity of all, and that must include protecting our neighbors however we can from fascism wherever it seeps into our city and our state. In that regard, the city of Burlington and the state of Vermont has failed. Given the firsthand evidence that we've been presented with for weeks, I did not see the city or the state keeping people safe from the actual outside agitators, that being ICE. Instead, we see an assisting of the violation of constitutional rights, an assisting of the unlawful abduction of 3 people, all on our dime, and done under the assumption that the federal agency known to constantly violate the law and our rights was operating legally without significant verification. The feds will neglect reality and the law to get their warrants, and they will neglect reality and the law to execute them. I hope that lesson is clear to the city now. When I hear the firsthand testimony of events and the contrast of other instances of the community nonviolently compelling ICE to abandon efforts to abduct our neighbors when local and state police were not present, it shows to me that the city and the state enabled the escalation. I do denounce these actions. We failed. And what is important now is how we, as a city, side with the people and not with the oppressors, now and going forward. The bottom line for me is if the police are not there solely to defend the people from ICE's illegal actions, including the victims of this terror, in whatever way that they can, as we talked about in our discussion, and enforce the law on the ones who are actually violating it, then they should not be there. The community is asking us for accountability. The community is asking us for justice. We have policies such as the FIP for a reason, to uphold people's humanity and provide mechanisms for accountability and for justice. As was said, made to prevent what ended up taking place on March 11th. Again, we failed. We must exercise such mechanisms through their investigations and amend policies such as mutual aid so this can never happen again. And more importantly, reaffirm that we will actually follow these policies. It's not merely legally just for us to do these things. It is our moral imperative as public servants, as human beings, or else I must ask, why are we even here? Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Breyer. I'm going to turn to you next, Councilor Sanchez-Parkinson, but can I get a sense as to, are there any other councilors that want to, you'd like, okay. Any other councilors? Okay. So I think we will try to, because I do want to be mindful of time here, and we've gone for almost 4 hours, so I want to be respectful to our guests this evening if we haven't already gone over our welcome here. I think we'll turn to you, Councilor Sanchez-Parkinson, we'll turn to you, Councilor Singh, and then Councilor Grant will try to end with you, if that's okay by my colleagues here. All right, Councilor Sanchez-Parkinson, please go ahead.
I just wanted to make a brief comment and a big takeaway that I'm taking with me. And this is in sort of response to your question, President Travers, as well as some comments that Attorney Martin-Diaz mentioned earlier. And that is the tension between bureaucratic systems and movement and community work. And to be able to be sitting in a space with all of those individuals together is actually really beautiful. I also want to deeply respect the approaches that we all have, and that is that there are approaches that movement leaders, community leaders have that don't align with bureaucratic systems, and that is okay. That is how our society continues to function, and I just want to say, I respect that. I don't need to know every detail of how things are done in a community, but I also am willing and excited to build that trust so that if there is an opportunity to collaborate across these systems, that we have that opportunity to do so. But that is something that I've been reflecting quite a bit based on your comments at the very beginning, Attorney Martin-Diaz, of how as we enter bureaucratic systems, we end up with this tension and sometimes leaving behind or aside some of the trust and relationships that we once had in order to respect the work that you all do. So I just wanted to reflect on that conversation.
Thank you. Councilor Singh?
I'll just be brief. I hear what people are, the comments that are coming, from this table, and what I heard tonight, and there's still a lot of, I'm still not clear on a lot of things with regards to this. The legal framework of which you've laid out, Attorney Martin-Diaz, I really appreciate. There are still within, the system of rule of law that we are pursuing ICE, and that's being done. What I fail to see is where the intersection of a federal agency that's clearly rogue and doesn't follow the rule of law, and where that intersects with our local law enforcement. And I get what people want to have happen, but from a practical sense, what that looks like on the ground, that's why I asked if those municipalities that have done that, have they been tested on the ground? And what I mean is being tested on the ground is local law enforcement with ICE? And that, to me, is the overarching question. Because, to me, and I'll say it again, that's federal versus local. What are we asking, of our local law enforcement? What is that start? What does that mean? What is that the beginning of? I think we need to ask ourselves that, and I still don't have a full understanding of what that intersection really looks like. And have we really weighed, what that is as a community? And I think that's really important to ask ourselves, not just as a community, but as human beings, of what that potentially becomes, something that we subject not only our migrant neighbors to, but all neighbors.
Thank you, Councillor Sang. Councillor Grant, and then I'll be happy to open the floor once more to our guests here to see if they have any parting words. Go ahead,
Thank
Councillor
you.
Grant.
A couple of things. During my work on oversight and accountability and as a police commissioner, it became very, very clear that our local law enforcement was very disconnected from the community that it served. I was shocked at the single-digit percentage of the number of officers who actually lived in our city, who patrolled our cities. And they were living in areas that were nowhere near as diverse as Burlington is, as our neighbor in Winooski is. And because of that, that caused profiling, which is documented. Anybody have any questions about that? Let me know. It caused use of force cases. When we talk about not having money, we've paid out substantial sums. And even though the city met its deductible, the insurance company was like, nah, you want to get rid of this? You're going to have to pay more on your end. That's real. Anybody want to know the numbers? Let me know. I think, what are we asking? What does it look like? It looks like someone holding the line. It looks like someone holding the line to make sure that the law is followed and that people's constitutional rights are protected. We knew this was not happening. We have copious amounts of examples of how this was not happening. So that is part of my concern, as I mentioned earlier. We didn't seem prepared. Someone has to hold the line when we look at what's happening in our country. Am I saying that's easy? No, it's not. But we have to hold the line. And that means we have to do the lawful thing, and that's what we need to expect our local law enforcement agencies to do, to hold the line time and time again tonight and in the State House hearings and in other hearings and in conversations. The word collaboration comes up over and over again. We have to hold the line. That's what it looks like.
Thank you, Councillor Grant. Well, again, I want to thank all of our participants for being here this evening. I think this was a very valuable hearing. Here at City Hall, 10 p.m. is an early meeting, but I know that may not feel like it's the case for everyone here, so I'm deeply appreciative of your being here this late and receiving and answering our questions. I certainly understand if you don't want to extend the meeting any further, but I also want to provide you the opportunity to, if you have any last words or thoughts, to take that opportunity now. Otherwise, we know that this is an ongoing discussion with all of our community partners, yourselves included, and we'll look forward to our continuing to engage.
Thank you, President Travers. If you will all indulge me for one more moment.
Of course.
A lot of the work that we do requires on the very excellent witnessing and data reporting by community organizers, and a very close partner of mine, Leif Tarenta. Leif, can you come up, please? Because Leif has expertise just want to make a record to respond to a question that's come up a few times now around police liaison.
Hi, sorry. I do police liaison trainings, not with any of these orgs, just, but I do it professionally. And I wanted to say that a police liaison role only works when police are following their own policies. So the issue in this case isn't that migrant justice isn't being clear about having police liaisons, it's that according to their own policies, the police should not have been there in the first place. Once police are violating their own policies, or in this case FIP, there's nothing a police liaison can do at that point. So the issue isn't anything that these amazing organizations are doing, it's that the police shouldn't have been there.
That, and let's do this again.
Sure. How about Monday? No. Rachel?
Yeah, just to close it out, thank you again for the time and space to share our testimony. As an organization, as a community, it's invaluable to the desire and the search for justice to be able to speak about what happened and to have that taken seriously. So I deeply appreciate that. And the most important step towards justice is yet to come, right? The continuing investigations, and once the investigations have concluded, making them as public as possible so that everyone has access to all of this information. I think it is our right as a community to know what happened and understand why the officers made the decisions that they made to violate the policies that we've been fighting for and have won. And then see the accountability that comes out of that, right? We've spoken a lot tonight about broken trust, and that trust needs to be earned back. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, again, gratitude and thanks for you all being here and for sharing some very personal testimonials. If there's nothing further from my colleagues here and seeing no other business before the council this evening, then absent objection, I'll adjourn our meeting right at 10 p.m. Thank you again.